we had a Cox walk past us and had a child as we were exhibiting. And she walked past carrying a Cox walk. She turned around and came back and said, "This is the best product I've ever bought."
Hey, what is up? Welcome to Last Stroke Counts. Today's guests are the owners of Active Tools, John and Joe. Please welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having us. We've come out to see you guys, but I thought that would be really interesting to have a little look around at the manufacturing process, which is pretty cool. I'm sure we'll talk about that a little bit more. But yeah, in general, it's funny. Obviously, you emailed us and said that I think it was Zoe that was sort of talked about having a Cox box.
Yeah, she did. A Cox walk.
Cox walk.
Yeah, she did, yes. And yeah, because you had a word with us at Mana Regatta.
Yeah.
And we thought, not sure about that. But
Yeah.
no good reason. And we thought, well, why not? We got some new products. It'd be nice to see you anyway.
Yeah. I think for us, like the interesting thing has been is like we talked about, but there's a lot of people that talk about why rowing doesn't have more technology or like that technology's out there and how come we don't have it. And I think that would be interesting for people to actually kind of dive in and see what it takes to bring something to market.
Yeah, I think you have to be specific about what people are asking for there, because some of it they probably wouldn't want if they had it. But so it'd be interesting.
Yeah, some things are like nice as an idea, but like not actually if you were to having to maintain it and keep track of it every day.
Yeah, people often talk about head-up displays, inlay glasses, so they don't have to look down at the. But that hasn't even taken off in cycling, which is 1,000 times bigger and has the same problems. So it's very unlikely, even if you did it, but it would be successful in rowing.
And to also keep the average cost down of producing that sort of thing to make it worth it for the business.
Well, that's the problem. Yeah, so if if anyone in Row's product cost any less, their products wouldn't exist. The people don't realise that it's not like there's anyone making money in Row apart from probably Concept 2 with their ergs. So the products simply wouldn't exist.
Yeah.
So they have to be that priced, and they are probably simpler than you'd expect in another sport like cycling, where people love their gadgets.
Yeah.
But rowers aren't that keen on sort of buying new stuff. It's quite interesting.
Yeah, I guess the nature of it being a team event, I always spoke about sort of a lot of the equipment is shared. I think in cycling it's all yours, and if you have something nicer, you get it. I mean, there are some Coxes at the top end that will have their own Cox box, but it's
quite a lot.
big.
Yeah, we find quite a lot of people buy their own personal one once they get near the national level.
Yeah,
or some clubs insist on them having.
Yeah, it's quite a good. I don't know if Thames still do it, but they were getting Coxes to buy units instead of charging the membership.
Oh yeah,
which is just a really good idea, because then they look after it a lot better. Because I mean that's definitely one of the things that we found with the Cox Orb is you get them coming back in all sorts of states, but because there is no ownership there, it's a club thing, and you just grab it and you use it, and you don't really care about it. But once you've kind of paid for it yourself, you're kind of like, I'm going to look after this a bit better.
They always come back in better condition if somebody owns it.
Yeah,
you can see it straight away. I mean, it's exactly the same with rowing machine. You go to someone's private house and they're like, "Oh, I know, no one's seen it for like 5 or 6 years. It's probably really bad, isn't it?" And I'm like, "No, it's not really bad." Do you go to open a rowing machine that's kept in a boathouse that floods? So it's that fine silt. So once a year it just sucks. Yeah, all those sort of things, like rusty and literally flooded. Well, yeah. I mean, water stuff we'll get onto, I'm sure. Let's reverse a little bit though and just kind of talk about, I guess, how you guys both got into rowing to start with, and then I guess from rowing into doing this. Who's going first?
So go first.
So I started rowing at university, then probably got into it more seriously straight after university, back down in Exeter Rowing Club. And then that kind of prompted a move to Henley, where I rowed at Upper Thames. And quite a similar story, kind of, really got into it, kind of wanted to push and see how far you could go. And then unfortunately, which is pretty common, my back went. So it sort of tied in. So when I came to Henley was when I started working at Active Tools. Looking back at it, was in 2013. Was when I started an internship, and then it's kind of just sort of developed from there, really. And it kind of
10 years.
Yeah, 10 years.
I was going to say 7 or 8.
Yeah, no.
That's the extra COVID years. It's just add.
Oh yeah.
But I think, one of the things I was thinking about in the build up to this is kind of, so we briefly discussed it and you kind of touched on it a minute ago, that rowing, you're not in rowing as a business to make money. It's a passion business. And what I think keeps me in it, especially at the moment, because John coaches a bit, and in the back of my head I think one day I'd like to coach, but then I was like, what really sort of motivates me at the moment? But I think it's the case for a lot of rowers. Rowing gives you a lot. It gives you a lot of friendships, gives you a lot of memories, and that creates you want to give something back. And that's definitely the motivator for me, I think, is being able to give something back to rowing, a really tangible way.
I would say I've enjoyed speaking to coaches and in that kind of what's the difference between someone who loves rowing and then just stops at rowing, or someone who loves rowing and then continues into coaching or continues into doing something else. That's been kind of interesting to find out. But also same thing from our perspective, having finished rowing, wanted to give back, tried a bit of coaching, really enjoyed it, but being busy with the business as well. I was just coaching on a small level. I had maybe 10, and I could affect some of them. I could share some of my knowledge to 10 people. But then if we through this podcast, hopefully you can share knowledge with a lot more people. So I guess in terms of coaching one club or providing tools that let everyone have a better time rowing.
I think you can look back as well and you can think how would I have used this when I was rowing, and how would that have benefited me or enabled me to go further or do more. I think that's quite an exciting thing as well. It's being able to look at how you can impact those younger generations coming through. And I think, especially with some of our new products and hopefully the oarlock, which we'll get on to talk to, I think it can be a real, you can really change the way people progress through rowing. And I think you can take a lot of lessons from what you went through, and think, that's quite, get a lot of kind of pleasure out of that.
I think it's super important to have to be in that sport. When you see sort of an app or a piece of equipment designed for a sport, and you're it looks like a good piece of equipment, but this person clearly doesn't do this sport. It just really doesn't work in the real world.
I think rowing is I think we found that over the years as well. It's really important to have a rowing background to work in rowing, because just even in a business sense, the way that the rowing businesses function is sort of very different to the business world as you've had the corporate world, I think.
I think people would like it not to be. I'd like to imagine that it isn't. So they'll think, I'm going to come up with this fantastic device and everyone's going to want to buy it.
Yeah.
But in the rowing world, it can take 2 years before people actually start thinking, well, I've seen that around enough times now that I will. So it's a very, it's not a business. Nobody would go into the rowing business who was a business person.
Yeah.
They'd only go in it because they cared.
It's almost a bit more of a challenge.
And then the first thing you do when you hire someone who has no rowing background is just teach them about rowing anyway. So you might as well hire rowers because they already know about the subject.
Yeah, definitely.
We tried that, with the rowing machine. Obviously, it's having someone who knows what a rowing machine feels like. They can instantly, even if they don't know what the problem is, they can I don't have to personally sit on 50 row machines. Pete and I and another guy we can all go around and just identify the ones that need doing. And trying to teach feel or that kind of knowledge to someone who's not been in it is kind of difficult.
How do you tell someone if a bungee is just a little bit slack, or the chain needs a bit more oil, or there's a sticky link, or things like that?
The other problem is
hours and hours and hours on it.
and you're trying to get it all done in a day. But then you kind of get a bit too oversensed. Then I'm like, that's 99% or 100% right. Is anyone else going to know? It's only because I sit on 1,500 machines a year or something.
It's probably the same when the customers are explaining an issue to you with if they're struggling to use a piece of technology, or maybe they don't quite understand something, to then go and explain. You definitely look deep into your rowing knowledge that you've amassed over the years, and then you can give them actionable advice and other things like this. You can give back in a meaningful way. while still using all the knowledge that you've built up about the sport over the years?
Yeah, definitely. I think as well, like understanding how boathouses are run is like a big part of it. There aren't, you look at like big programs where there are boatmen and things like that, but actually understanding that the majority of clubs are run by volunteers, giving up spare time, fixing boats. And so, like the more guidance you can kind of give them and the understanding of the situation as well, like especially with the coxswains, they get plugged into wiring that's 10, 15 years old, has been cut and soldered however many times. Like you've got to understand that is the situation as well. And like that is just how clubs work. So that really does change how you kind of like approach those conversations and things. And so I think it's genuinely like very important to have like a full understanding of how the rowing world works.
I guess the flip side as well is that it can take a long time to get trust in the industry, but then once you got it, you've sort of got it. Like people are more loyal.
So when we brought out the coxswain, we'd had the Spaniards for X years.
Yeah, what year did the coxswain come out?
2015.
Okay. When we started 22 years ago. In
2002.
And up until then, there was one
Coxing amplifier.
Yeah.
Well, there've been loads
There's been
of attempts at them over the years, which most people haven't heard of. So there is an Australian small company, very small company. Coxmate, but they're square, so they don't even fit the whole boat. So that doesn't help. And then there was
that's what we're talking about.
South African one. I remember Wade. There's a guy in Oxford, Rotator.
Ring Rotator. He used to fix ergs as well.
And there was a GPS one in America, and those are a guy called Davies, he made them in the UK. So there have been loads, but to actually get it sort of over the hurdle of being a sort of established, accepted product is quite a different thing than just sort of tinkering in your garage and making something that vaguely works.
Yeah. And what made you decide that was the piece of equipment you wanted to go for?
Well, it's by far not our first product, So we did the rigging tools, then we had a go at doing that sort of product, a coxswain amplifier, and failed basically on because the electronics never happened because we subcontracted it. Great. And then we did a simple rate meter, which is very successful.
Yeah.
And then we sort of came back to it and did it again properly with a sort of UK electronics designer rather than a Serbian one.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And he's very, very good.
Yeah, I remember when I started rowing at Leander, it didn't have a stroke coach or anything, and at the time the only one even the basic one was like 200 quid. And I remember getting told, like, I'll get your parents to buy one for you. I was like, that's not the position that I'm in. Like that's not going to work. And I think a big part of everything, like a lot of the stuff we've tried to bring in Rowgear, both Pete and I didn't come from that unlimited fund background, and it's the situation you're in. Like, not anyone who finds themselves in that situation saying they shouldn't use that to their advantage, but a lot of what we've done, like with servicing and everything, it's all about just trying to bring the best thing at the lowest price, which is like what you guys are doing, and like even with the little things, like little bits and pieces, the sliders and equipment, things like that. It's all about like how, like, can we make this stuff affordable? Can we make people feel like they're not, we both had that sense of like having crap kit compared to everyone else around us and just not feeling quite like, like
being very happy because I found like a second-hand stroke coach on sale for like £80 and it was like 15 years old, and like, oh yes, finally, I can use the impeller and do all sorts of things, and it's like, you just don't compete in the same way. Like when you go out training and then like all your teammates have got their own singles. And you're rowing in Steve Redgrave's old A-Links, like, which is not bad at all. I love rowing in that boat, but it's like 30 years older.
I think that also makes it more like, it's more of a challenge, isn't it? Because you're trying to do something really good, but like you said, keep the price as reasonable as possible. Work with different clubs. Everyone's got a different budget, like you said, that you're like looking at like how boathouses are designed, how things work.
People do have different needs. So we did a range of 4 coxswains, whereas there's only ever been one what are they called? Coxbox.
Cut that out. We're not going to mention their name.
Up until recently.
Well, should we just beep every time? That's a bit like a swear word.
I'll hire an editor to do that for me.
And even the current model, there is actually one model they just de-feature the software on.
It's all locked in, and you just pay. Which is
an interesting approach. Yeah, but we deliberately did a range of 4. So there was something right from something without a display and was just amplifier up to something which had GPS and voice recording, which had never been done before. So that was a very deliberate thing to do.
Yeah, and then So from 2015, how many models did you have? Did you start with one?
No, we started with all 4.
With all 4,
because once you've done the top model, you just have to de-feature.
Okay, yeah.
So there's a lot less on the circuit board as you go down.
Yeah.
And they sell in different proportions. We sold a lot more of the top model than we expected.
Yeah.
Interestingly, people were waiting for something with more features.
I think having something connected as well, all connected up. How many Coxes have got their Cox box and their dictaphone and something out, and then their radio to their coach and this and that. Yeah.
No, the idea was to do something which was just one product.
Yeah.
And we had a Cox walk past us and had a child as we were exhibiting. And she walked past carrying a Cox walk. She turned around and came back and said, "This is the best product I've ever bought."
Yeah.
That's the feedback.
Just like, wow, just fantastic,
Yeah, it's good to hear. Like, especially like you said, like I think that's the thing that we found certainly about spending a bit more time in the circuit and being at events and seeing you guys and stuff. It's like, it really is more of a community feel. And like, I think that's why we've done well. Obviously we've all rode, everyone in my company pretty much has rode at some point, and we've been around in the business for in the industry for a long time, and you feel like people are buying equipment off rowers, and it feels like a nicer thing to do. And I think like it's like even doing this, getting you guys on, getting Roy Cruikshank from All Mark One, Feathered and Squared, I think that's really important. And I think like that's what you're talking about, like when the love side of it comes from. You're not just in here like, oh, here's a market, here's somewhere to make money, I'll make a product and just kick it out. It's like, no, I'm making something that I really care about, that I think that can help the industry. Yeah, and if you hear someone like say that, it was
fantastic. It was just like, almost tears in your eye moment.
Yeah,
it really was.
Yeah, because you care, because you're like, and because you have this vision of like, I feel like there's like a better way to do this, and no one else has done it. Yeah.
So this is the feedback that you got this year from using Coxhub. Let's reverse back to when you initially started Active Tools and what the vision you had for the business back then. So let's go back to the beginning.
Right, so I ran a product design company. I still have it. We design products for other manufacturers, and I started that in 86, when I left the Royal College of Art. And at one point it sort of built up to 5 or 6 designers, but then that was more hassle. I wanted to get older, so it sort of shrank down a bit. And then there came a point where, I still love design, but I thought, well, why not use these skills to start a manufacturing company? And that wasn't, I didn't have some vision of wanting to do furniture or anything. So I thought, why not rowing? But the initial idea, which we developed, wasn't ours, which was quite interesting. So one of the Oxford boatmen, Terry Baker, do you know Terry Baker? He's left now.
That's the name, yeah.
Yeah, so he had a little device that you put across your boat, and it has rack and pinions, so there was a point in the middle that stayed fixed, and you then hooked your tape measure on it and measured out the oarlock. So it's a quicker way of doing spans.
Mm.
So we sort of took that idea, and we still pay him a small royalty, because the product ended up nothing like that. It's a much more integrated, professional thing. And then we added a height gauge, a laser height gauge, and a pitch gauge to go with it. And those are sort of faded away the laser height gauge cost us more to make than we sold it for. That wasn't terribly clever. And the pitch gauge, people started using these these circular saw pitch angle setting boxes, which cost $12, £12 off Amazon.
Yeah.
So a sort of £60 pitch gauge faded away. So that's how it all started. It grew from there. But for a long time, it wasn't a proper business. We were doing it and sort of building, but we didn't have the right product. So, the idea was, after we'd got going, was electronics, because, there clearly is a need for electronics in rowing.
Yeah.
And there's a very established player, but, there's nothing miraculous about what they do.
Yeah.
So we thought we'd move into electronics and failed the first time. We developed Copsy amplifier and a sort of all singing or dancing Cops's boat product, and the electronics never happened. And then he sort of regrouped, did the rate meter, and then came back to the Cotswold, really when Joe joined, and he was instrumental in getting it out there.
I think that's interesting. Like there can be like not often like the right time. It can be like the right time to bring something or to try something. I think I found the same thing with Rowgear. There's been times earlier on where I've tried to branch out into other stuff, and we just like weren't a big enough company. Like no one was listening, no one was looking or watching. And then like it's come round again. It's sort of been there long enough. More people know the name, and it's like almost the same thing, but it's like obviously you learn from the first time, and then
we've made a load of mistakes along the way.
Yeah.
That I think most people have in business.
Yeah.
You can't regret that. But we've got there, and we've got plans for the future. So,
that's awesome. Yeah,
and it's been fascinating. If I just stayed running a design company, you're always developing other people's ideas. You're using your skills. You love designing things, but it's somebody else's idea.
Yeah.
So the challenge of actually using your own idea, as a group, our own ideas.
Yeah.
It's just amazing.
Yeah.
That's awesome, because you essentially found a way to like apply your skills into something that you're passionate about, and that's rowing. And it's not necessarily because like you want to make millions off the business, but because you want to make like tools more accessible for rowers and things that can be helpful.
Test yourself. You have to. It's not. You're not. Nobody's going to go through the pain of starting a business unless they're going to get something out of it. But that something isn't money. Obviously you'd like ultimately to make a living at it. But that something is proving your ability. And if I just stayed with a design company, I'd have been bored senseless by now.
Yeah.
Because but to begin with, it's what I wanted to do. I wanted all these projects that were from industries you didn't have any understanding of, and to do, we did medical equipment and everything, hundreds and hundreds of projects.
But you just do your little bit and you never see the end.
No, you do see the end. Yeah, because we're designing the look and feel of the product. So, you're heavily involved. If you're doing a medical product, we'll be in there watching an operation, understand how it works. No, you were heavily involved, but it still wasn't your idea.
Yeah.
So you're testing your skills, but you're not testing your vision.
Yeah, it's different when it's yours, isn't it? But yeah, I'd say the same. It's funny, interesting. Like Rowgear, really was the same thing. It wasn't really a business for a long time. It was just I finished it. Yeah, it just helped me row because I could work it around my training. And when I finished, I took it on, and then it just becomes like I don't really care how much money I make. I just want to make enough money that I don't need to get a real job. Like that was it. Like if I don't have to work for someone else,
sounds good,
and I can just keep doing this. Like that's kind of like the aim.
Yeah, and I can relate to also like what you're saying. Like if you were working for someone else, you'd be bored senseless by now. That's kind of why I decided to like step away from like the corporate world and like not really pursue a career as just trying to like climb the corporate ladder, and instead working with Tom, working with Rowgear, and trying to make a change in rowing. Because like if rowers aren't going to do it and they're just going to go and work for someone else and just be a number in the system or a brick in a wall, like you say, then the sport's not really going to evolve. And then I think we need more passionate people who care for the sport and want to do it because they love it. So no, it's
how you get the best products, isn't it? Someone who actually cares about what they're making. Yeah. So to play devil's advocate then and go with the comment, the Coxhob's really expensive. I think a lot of people have this idea of it being expensive. Like from my point of view, so said earlier, just seeing down in the factory, seeing that everything's assembled here, like you said, is UK. A lot of stuff's UK manufactured, UK electronics.
And designed as well.
Design and put together, all that thing's happening here, which I thought was like really impressive to see. I didn't sort of know if it would be different than that, but I think just seeing that's really cool. But again, we kind of briefly discussed, off air, like everything that goes into it. So like, how long does it take to do, and like how waterproof does it have to be, and how many times do you have to drop it in the river before it's safe, and how do you make it idiot proof? Because we all know novice rowers, we've all been novice rowers, and we all know we were idiots. All this equipment's so new, no one knows what they're doing. How does that all come to play? What's the timeline? Those sort of things.
Yeah, so the challenge with rowing really is the size of the market.
Yeah.
So if you're making a cycling product, electronic cycling product, you could expect to sell hundreds of thousands of them. If you're making an iPhone, you could be selling millions of them.
Per day. Per day.
Well, possibly, yeah. If you're selling a Copsy amplifier, if you get into the low thousands, you're doing very, very well.
Yeah.
And in fact, that's probably the size of the global market.
Yeah.
And if you get into Cops's products, you're probably into the slightly higher thousands. You're certainly the total global market be under 10,000. So that's the problem, that you've got to amortize your investment over that time, and B, you haven't got the economies of scale. If you're buying circuit boards, that will cost you a third if you were selling even cycling type concerts. So
everything gets cheaper the more you can order.
So they cost what they have to cost, and if they cost any less, they wouldn't exist. And I'm not just talking about us, I'm talking about NK as well. The products would not exist. So there is no choice. There's no profiteering going on. It's simply just the economics of these small markets. And if you look at other sports, small sports, it's the same. You look at what equipment costs in the small sports.
So then does that I guess makes it like you really need to think, if you're going to bring a new product out, you sort of need to look forward at and be like, how much is it worth putting into this?
Yes, but the advantage of Rowing market is it's stable. So the Coxall's been on the market for almost 10 years, and there's still nothing wrong with it. And the rate meters has been going for longer, and selling more than ever. So you can think, well, I can sell this product for 10 or 15 or even 20 years sometimes. And the span gauge will probably still be selling in 30 years' time if we're still here.
That's a cool thought there, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. So, that's the advantage. And also, competitors aren't interested. So, like you were saying that, people are dropping out of the shoe market, the big names, because it's just not worth bothering with. And, if you're an electronics sports manufacturer in China, you're not going to put your money into developing your own product because it's, 1% the size of the cycling market.
Yeah, that's one we sort of looked at that and talked about an advantage. Like, it's something there aren't really any, when we looked at sort of clothing, things like sliders, things like that. Obviously, not a slider, it's a piece of equipment everyone uses, but you're using like a Speedo or Adidas. Like, there's no sort of like, it's difficult as a rower to wear a piece of equipment that says I'm a rower. Like the one that I've kind of like, the comparison is, say, CrossFit. It's very easy if you're into CrossFit to buy a t-shirt that literally just says Reebok CrossFit on it, or there's a couple of brands that are very specific to that industry, and like that's easy. So like that's the kind of thing we were like, it would be nice to like produce some stuff, like we said, the regatta robe slider, something where people can wear it and feel like, I'm a rower, I'm part of this tribe. And I think that's
yeah. And also to add to your point about the pricing, like you really get what you pay for with electronics products in rowing, right? Because say you spend money on a Coxall, like you said, 10 years on, they're still working. So they're designed, they're obviously made with like quality materials. They must go through rigorous testing, and like God knows how many times per week they get used by how many different crews, what conditions they get stored in, like cold sheds over the winter. It's not an easy thing to do, and it could probably be possible to sort of sacrifice the materials, maybe drop the price down a little bit, but then you're not going to have super satisfied customers who are going to really trust in your product and the fact that they can really rely on it for the entire season, or it's not going to turn off in the middle of the race because a connection's gone loose or something like that.
Coxy amplifiers are very difficult products, so we wouldn't claim that they were, didn't need servicing and didn't have problems sometimes. So in fact, when we launched it at the head of the Charles, we met Alex James, who runs NK, and she came up to us and she said, well, I can't say that I'm glad you've done this, but at least there's somebody else to share the pain now. Fantastic.
Welcome to the party.
Yeah, that's right. So, particularly when, there were things that we've changed since the early one, and they're now very decently reliable. But there were things we got wrong, and if anyone ever brings an early one back, we upgrade it for free, to the latest spec. But, we certainly didn't get it 100% right.
Yeah, but then again, that's the someone has to take a risk, and someone has to try it, and someone has to put.
Yeah, and we've done loads of testing. As you say, there's a video on YouTube, with it salt tested underwater for 24 hours. People still break,
Yeah, we were saying as well. Just like the one thing is, 6:30 in the morning. It's just getting light, and I'm looking down at a novice Cox, like trying to force this gate. Stop, please stop.
Yeah, there's only one way that it goes.
Yeah, there's only one
state that someone will come back in. But yeah,
it's unbelievable. You'll have the gold-plated pins showing because people have just gone.
But even that, like in the process then of designing it, by making it something where those bits that wear can be replaced rather than not having to do the
that
whole
is something
unit.
we did. Yeah, so we thought we were sort of right. So we made the battery click off the balls and replace the battery after 3 or 4 years, and we made the connector block user replaceable in principle.
But you need to know a bit.
No, it's perfectly doable. So, every club will have somebody who's perfectly capable of doing it. But a lot of clubs or coaches will think, well, after 3 years, we should send this back to Active Tools anyway. They're just down the road.
Yeah.
And we should get them to service it. But we do get people changing their own collectible.
Yeah, I think, probably more so now we've got to the stage where people are sort of familiar enough with it that that's now become, they're sort of comfortable doing it. And again, it's kind of that, how it takes time. Like showing up to regattas, talking to people, and just kind of offloading some of that knowledge and having them come here to the factory, have a look around and show them how it's done. Like just being able, it takes time for that to kind of get passed around.
Yeah.
And that is one of the good things about rowing as well. Like there's so much word of mouth involved, especially with new products in the Cox orbits. What we found, it took time. It took time for people they don't want to be the first, but they also want to hear it from somebody else. Like I've been using it, and I've been getting on well with it. And so it's like it's not like it was ever sort of easy. I think probably in those like early days, there were things that we didn't get quite right. And actually, so that comment at the Heather Charles was so important because you get your first repair back and you think, oh God, like have we done this?
So you feel guilty.
Really
guilty.
repair.
But every company gets returns.
I know. I had just recently. I had a gym. Something went wrong twice at the same gym, and I was fully packed for like the whole month, saying I have to go out on a Sunday morning and fix this thing, and you feel awful. And just thinking, like, what am I doing wrong? This is going awful. And then sort of sat down and go, hang on, we do like 1,000 machines a year.
Yeah.
If I'm getting a call back on like 2 or 5 or 10, like that's really good. And like you can't berate yourself at every single one. Yeah. And I think, like I said, playing devil's advocate is too expensive. It's all perspective. Like in terms of what rowing equipment costs, I think actually it's like really affordable. What you guys,
54 grand for an MPAC 8. That's a lot of money.
We had a look for the world class, like the top spec
the Olympic
8.
Tech 8.
It's like 80 grand.
Yeah.
Or something.
Yeah.
Bargain.
I think it's like it's so easy to compare as well. That's I think probably one of the problems, especially with cycling, because I think like a lot of rowers cycle as like a side thing, and so like you're very easy like, oh, my cycling computer like costs this, but it's purely just market side. Like
but a top end cycling computer is 350.
It's like it's still
they are. And I'd say they were overpriced.
And that's something each person has to buy. Whereas like you said, you're like a cop.
I think it's that mentality as well. Like cyclists love to have the new gear and like new bikes every year. It's kind of in rowing. You kind of brought up just using club equipment.
We find the same thing definitely with rowing machines. You go into a club, and they've got that one in the corners and that's gone. That you won't be able to fix that. Like, that needs a £22 part. And it is absolutely fine. And the other thing is I try and obviously budgets depending and like you can't maybe necessarily like look after equipment every year, but we'll have some clubs that will come to us like maybe once every 5 years, and you're like, you've just waited until everything's destroyed and then I come in and obviously the bill is large and they go, we're not doing that again, and you try and be like, if you kept on top of it. But these, like you said, is difficult. Like clubs often volunteer run, sort of like all these student clubs, they have someone different in charge.
Like the Sun, even in clubs as well. Not even just universities, like clubs, the committees change, and then somebody comes in that's got, I don't know, they're focused on some part of, I don't know, buying boats or buying oars, and then somebody comes in as let's sort out the ergs. Like it just changes. Like committees come and go, and
and that's just even like talking about the UK, right? Because obviously like your products are distributed worldwide, so you have agents in like I think all 5 continents, he said. And then obviously then you look at the weather demands of rowing, right? You have clubs which will be rowing when it's like -3 and it's really, really frosty. And then you'll have summer racing that goes on when it's like 35 degrees. Then we spoke with Matt Tarrant, who's the head coach of Saudi Arabia. And obviously in there, the humidity and the heat is so high. So to make something work reliably across like all those different environments without like actually needing to purchase a different product, then like you can really start to see why the price tag is where it is. I mean, it's kind of justified by the demands because rowing is just so unpredictable.
salt is the big issue. So, like in Australia, they often boat by wading the boats out in salty water.
Oh yeah, we didn't even talk about coastal rowing.
Yeah. Well, no, fine boat. They'll be on a estuary. So, they're fine boats. So Sykes sell thousands of our shoes, or they did do. They still sell many hundreds. And it's because people used to say that when you opened the boat club doors in Australian Row Club, the smell of the feet was just unbelievable. So our sort of rock-proof adjustable shoes, really, really took off over there. And the same with the pins on the Coxthorpe. If the salt gets into the pins and even gold plating. Well, no, the gold plating is fine, but it makes sense to rinse them off in fresh water afterwards. Yeah. And in America, there's a lot more saltwater rowing.
Yeah, and then
it's more about salt than about temperature. Yeah, interesting.
And what's the kind of how long, like you say, if you develop a new stroke coach, how long are you testing that before you're happy enough that you're taking that to market?
What we like to do is to get some out there and get people using them.
Yeah,
beta testers will we'll give out we'll lend out a few and we'll sell some others at a reduced price. And so the Active Speed, which is our new product, we've had about 50 of those out for 3 or 4 years now. Yeah, so we wouldn't normally have them out that long, but we've had software development issues on the Bluetooth side, so it's taken longer. But we'd certainly want products out there for sort of 6 months with people using them and finding the things we haven't managed to find. And even then, when you go into bigger volume production, you'd expect to find a few more issues.
Yeah.
Yeah, so with the Active Speed at the moment, it's UK sales only, just because we're here, we can get them back if we need to. Like we can, you just want, they just get put into so many different scenarios when they're on sort of general sale that you could never imagine. So you just want to kind of keep them close for those first few months, just as they get used.
And all our agents are shouting. They get people contacting them saying, when can I buy Active Speed off you? And then they come on to us.
So the Bluetooth connection is to connect to...
Trade secret?
We don't have to talk about it.
No, we should talk... We'd like to talk about the product, I guess. But the Bluetooth is to connect to the app, but also the impeller doesn't have wires connecting to it. It has a pickup inside the boat, which is Bluetooth, and talks to the product. Nice. So the app itself wasn't too bad, but nominally there are Bluetooth experts out there who write firmware for Bluetooth modules, right? And we failed with 3 of those experts. And that took quite a lot of time.
When you say failed, do you mean in terms of reliability, or
no? They failed to produce the goods. They failed to produce firmware that worked properly.
Oh, yeah. Oh, okay.
This sort of thing to start working with other experts.
Well, that's right. So our proper expert, our UK-based electronics expert, learnt about Bluetooth and did it himself in the end.
Oh, okay. There you
go. But that's why it took a long time to develop. And that's why beta ones were out there for a long time.
Yeah. I guess, if you want to talk about the whole thing, we can kind of, it's a little bit that can get...
Yeah. Okay. So we touched on the Bluetooth. So connects to an app where you can download your data. So the app doesn't handle the data. It will kind of just push it to wherever you want it to go. So you can email it to yourself. You can send it to Training Peaks or Strava or wherever you want it to go, essentially. And then you can also update the firmware through the app. So that was one of the big things that was sort of holding us back initially, is you couldn't update the firmware, which is quite a big thing, because then it would have to come back here to be updated. So updates through the app. You've got a 2, 4, 6 segment display, so you can sort of scroll through. So the sort of thinking behind that is you can set up screens sort of tailored to what kind of workout you're doing that day. If you're just going out for 16K paddle and you just want to purely see your distance or your time and your stroke rate, then you can have the 2-segment one. And then if you're doing sort of a more complex workout, you can have the 6 segments. So you can program sort of complex workouts on here. So you can have variable rest periods. You can sort of set target stroke rates. You can set target speeds with it. And then you've got a coaches link. So with the antenna fitted, so you don't actually have to have the antenna fitted. Mm-hmm. So if you're just using this as a personal sort of device, you could take off the antenna, and you've got a cap here that comes with the unit. But if you do want to use it as a as a coaching unit. You can just attach the antenna, and they're not specific. So a coach can use this one day and an athlete can use it in the afternoon. Like it's not you have to buy one coach's unit and one athlete's unit, any unit. So the idea being, if you had 5 in a club, one day 5 scholars could go out with them, the next day a coach could grab one, and then he can pair it with up to 5 devices. So he could scroll through, once they're sort of paired, he can scroll through with a button press through sort of 5 different people on the wall.
So you can have 5 singles out and he can see how they're doing.
Yeah.
So
using that.
So no more cheating on the rate caps. You're in trouble now if you've been cheating on your rate caps.
And you can see how much they're slowing the boat. It has a check display.
Oh, yeah.
That's good.
And you don't have to see what they're looking at. So you can select what metrics you want to see. You're not just getting like a mirror of their screen. Essentially, you can select whatever you want to see, what being sort of collected, essentially.
So I assume you got the antenna that it uses different technology to communicate with the other.
It's a range issue is why you have the antenna. So we tried to do it without an antenna. It's not it's a wireless link. It's not Bluetooth. So really, what I found and what everyone else, other people are using it, and you get about a minimum of 200 meters range.
Yeah.
And sometimes a lot, depending on the conditions.
I mean, if you can't see.
That's right. You can't coach at that range.
Yeah.
So it's magic. You're just cycling along. You can see exactly what's going on in the boat.
It's almost like the police speed cameras where they can catch you coming on a motorway from over a kilometre away.
A lot of the initial sales have been to coaches. Like John at uni. 8 or 10 of these now.
Okay, yeah.
And it's just magic.
His feedback's really good.
See what's going on. And to be fair, NK did have a product back in the day that did this called the XL, but they've all died now, virtually all died.
Okay.
And they haven't replaced it. So it is good. And then the product has stream compensation. So if you're using GPS, you can you park at the end of the reach, turn around, set your blades in the water, drift with the stream. It sees how much you drifted, and it will use that to compensate all the way up, turn around at the top end. So it's not perfect, but it makes quite a difference. And it's a patented feature. But the wireless accessories is, also very good. Having when was the last time you saw a bicycle computer with wires going down to the front wheel?
Yeah.
20 years ago.
Yeah.
It's a long time ago.
Well, I've not seen one, so
probably before mine, man. Yeah.
But exactly, I was just sort of talking about people sort of say like rowing's behind or whatever, but like you said, like it's where it is for the size it is.
That's the trouble,
But like that's amazing. Like all the features that you're talking about, like that's
a proper modernised device for people who want everything. So we still make our little rate meter, and we make a version of this without GPS for people who want that sort of £200 product in the middle.
Yeah,
but this is what most people buy now. Once they can afford it.
Yeah, I mean, I like the fact that it can, like you said, it's so like multi-use. It's not like a coach's handset which can't get used. Like that's such a difference for clubs. And like you said, like all these things can only come from someone who's coached and rowed and understands like not just the wireless features great from like a technical perspective, but like the features and the options and stuff.
Yeah, and people say to us, well, why won't it talk to a phone? Why can't a coach have a phone? But if you've coached, the last thing you want on a bike or in a boat is a phone hanging out here. It's just nightmarish.
I'd say to Cox's, like go to Argos and spend £6 on a cassette, whatever it is. They're like 12 quid on a cassette. No, it's fine. I'll take my phone in.
On the boat. Are you mad? And I was coaching one of the colleges, and the cops dropped their phone in the boat, in the water, at Abingdon, and that was the end of that. Brand new phone. She had it a week.
Oh, they're probably like £1,000 now.
Well, that's probably true.
That's the other thing you talk about. everyone's happy to have their £1,000 iPhone. No one wants to spend money on anything
and replace it after 18 months.
Well, they're often not paying cash, are they?
Yeah, and like you said, that equipment doesn't last. When you took up phones and stuff, 5 years on, it's not doing what everything else is doing.
And then people say, why don't you just have an app on your phone in the boat? But hardly anyone does it.
I think someone did.
No, there's about 5 or 6 out there. Your life is in that product.
Yeah.
You strap it to the boat in a waterproof case. Well, it's probably all right. But what happens the day it isn't all right?
Yeah.
There's your phone in the bottom of the river.
And also, like, if you've ever like rowed and you've done some really high end flat out bursts, sometimes the stroke coach goes flying.
Yeah.
So if that happens to your phone like that, I hope you're able to catch it. But
And they don't have daylight readable displays.
Yeah, especially when they're wrapped in a case as well. Like it comes very.
Oh yeah, so it's in a waterproof case.
Yeah. So when we were doing this, we got our designer to us, and then we can go through the video. So there are videos of the whole sculler's head and the whole head of the child with the scullers. And we got him to go through A, seeing if anyone was using a phone, and B, seeing what colour their bumpers were on their products.
Oh yeah.
And that's how we decided, how many of each colour to order. Obviously they were looking at NK products back in the day.
Yeah.
It was quite interesting, but there was, at that level, nobody's using their phone.
No.
It's just like, you're mad,
Yeah. It wouldn't. It's not going to do as much. It's not going to have the same capabilities.
Well, they have quite a good functionality, but they'll never link to an impeller, and their GPS module is 1 hertz rather than 10 hertz, and so it's not the same thing.
You're definitely limited by what features you can implement, because you're not designing a product from scratch, so you can't just mold it to follow the pattern that you want it to, because it's not designed for that specific sport. Which is why you've got the advantage. So, when will we be able to buy those things from you?
These have been on sale for about a month in Britain, and sales are going decently. You've always got this ramp up.
Yeah.
But it's going well, particularly with coaches, because coaches, a lot of them had experience with the NKXL product. And it's just magic. I coach a bit in Oxford, it's just magic. You can actually see what's going on with the boat.
Yeah, if you're coaching from a bike, you're so limited from what you can see. Yeah. Like, coaching from a launch is great, because you can see. It's a bit annoying if you're having to keep slowing down for other boats and stuff. It's freezing in the winter. The advantage of a bike is that it keeps you warm.
Stay a bit warmer.
But you've got to look one and then look where I'm going. Look where I'm going. So that kind of feedback is good. And
I don't want to admit how many times I've almost fallen in whilst doing that.
Well, I'm waiting for the day when I lived at Bedford School, and one of the Bedford modern coaches was renowned for going in every year just before Bedford Regatta. And I often end up with the foot, you end up with the front tyre like 6 inches from the bank, and you think, am I getting it? But I never have.
Is this my time?
I'm not going to break my duck. Literally, possibly.
Yeah, I mean, also, obviously, like speed of getting this stuff out. So in terms of from when I was rowing in video footage, some coach is going out with a camcorder and he'll video everyone, and at some point over the next 2 days, someone will plug it into the TV and you'll get to have a little look and compare that to when I was coaching, and it was like, well, we're filming on our phone of that day, and then we'll come in and then you'll airdrop it to every athlete, and they're walking home from the session with that video footage. So in terms of technology, the same thing, the speed at which, because it's different, it's great. Video analysis is great, but if you do it and then a week later you see it, then you're not going to make any changes from that. So the speed at which you can get the information back,
I think
it's important.
Kieran Clark said it in some of the under 23 development camps. Sometimes he would explain a concept to his athletes, and then someone's not going to say anything. And after the session, they come up to him and it's like, "Oh yeah, when you were explaining this particular move or something, I didn't really understand it." And he's like, "Well, you should have told me during the session because we're on the bank now, can't get in the boat." So absolutely. The faster you can get the data, the faster you can act on it, the faster you can implement any changes, and more changes. Maybe it's more free speed.
I think that's one of the really important things. I think it's one of the things we considered as well, and really considered with future products as well, is making it usable. How do you make it really usable for coaches and athletes? Because again, it's understanding how the majority of clubs run volunteer-based. You're not going to want to give up loads of time to download loads of data manually, correlate data manually. So it's how do you make that as seamless as possible so that it actually gets used? And so, you don't want data from every single session, but if that data is being collected and then you're like, oh, actually, I want to go back and look at this session, it's just happened that it's already been recorded. It's suddenly a lot easier for coaches to use data, and I think that's a really key thing that we've looked at, is kind of making it.
We are wanting to avoid getting involved with data analysis, and there are some good sort of sites out there. 2 Row specific ones, Lulem and Row Sandals, and then the general Strava and Training Peaks. But so we want to produce the right data that they can then display and analyse.
Yeah, that's the same.
It's too big a task for a small company like us to do.
Yeah, and everyone wants it differently. But like I say, it's just is making it as accessible as possible, which it looks like that's...
Yeah, you'll have your data, you can easily transfer it, and then it's up to you what happens with that data.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, rowing coaches are already overloaded with the amount of crews they have to look after. Like we already mentioned, like Joe mentioned, that obviously clubs are mostly run by volunteers, you see. So the last thing you want to do is bring something amazing to the rowing club and be like, hey, you've got all this amazing data, but like it's another job for you to do, to unpack it, to how you can, like, how quickly you can start making use of it. Because, look, I've got all this amazing stuff, but you need to spend 3 hours organizing it, and then you can, no, thank you, I'm not interested.
No,
so
it's really sure. And, I think coaches can sort of overdo it to begin with. They'll have all this data and they think they've got to look at it all. They've got to find a way of using it which doesn't involve too much of their time.
Yeah. I think like you said as well, obviously, I think a lot of rowing is because obviously we watch the higher end and more interested in like the top end, like Olympic level. It's great to like look at that, but like from a product perspective, like there's not that many people doing it at that level. And actually, like, how are these products getting used and how useful are they going to be for most people that row? Yeah. Like, I think this is sort of 30,000-40,000 people row in the UK. Like, if there's 1,000 going for the top level, I think I'd be surprised. Probably not even that. Yeah, 500 maybe across men and women. So if you look at that in terms of like, and I guess for you guys, like, that's difficult as well because you want to produce a product that people can take to the high level. They want to use that at Henley, but also, like you said, something that's going to work in the club.
Particularly why we do the configurable display, so you don't have to show 6 fields of data because you just want to go for a paddle. See the rate and the time or whatever.
Yeah, sometimes you can see too much. Yeah,
definitely. Particularly in rowing, where you do have to look down, and you do see these people who are sort of head down all the time because of it.
And then blades start coming out.
It's not a great way to row.
We all know that.
Yeah. But
oh, that's awesome. And then, so I guess with the gates as well. So this is kind of the next thing.
We've been developing this for years, but the problem is until we had the active speed, there's nothing for it to display its data on.
Sure.
But this potentially is a game changer. Right. So the problem, we perceive the problem with current rowing force measurement systems is that they take too long to move between boats. So if you want to move a peach system or even a NK M-Power system between boats, it takes about an hour and a half to move. And therefore they tend to stay, not in a elite situation, not in a sort of national squad, they'll have enough systems. Or Brooks, they'll have 6, 7 systems that they can just stay on the boat and that's fine. But if you're a small club, there are like Upper Thames, we both rowed Upper Thames, and there's one system and it sits on the men's first aid almost all the time. So what we were trying to develop was a system that you could move between boats in a minute. So you could have it on the first aid, and if there are 8 of you, you can move it in a minute, or if there are 1 of you, you can move it in 8 minutes. You can move it onto another boat. So the men could have it first outing, the women could have it second outing, the masters could have it in the afternoon. That was the idea. And that's quite a tricky thing to do. So what we did was come up with the idea that you fit our bare oarlock to any boats you want to use our system on. So, you just fit the oarlock, you set up the datum 0, and that's all stored in an animal or RFID chip. So there's little glass chips you put into animals. There's one in every oarlock. So the sort of setup information is put in there. Right, so potentially this is a game changer because it allows you to move it between boats in a minute per oarlock, whereas with a Peach type system or an M-Power type system, you're into 10 minutes. So if you're doing an 8, it's taking you an hour and a half genuinely to move it through.
I would say more than that in practice.
No, people like Abingdon, they've got all the looms on Velcro and they really get stuck in. You can do it in an hour and a half.
Yeah.
Rory Copas will tell you, will claim, and I'm sure he's right. So we wanted a system that was genuinely usable so that the men could use it in the morning, the women could use it second outing, the masters could use it in the afternoon, just something genuinely usable. And also, if it was that usable, you wouldn't necessarily have to buy a set of 8 for an 8. You could just buy 2 and move it down the boat, subsequent outings. So the concept is that there's an oarlock which replaces a standard oarlock and is more or less the same price, sort of £15 standard price. And so the first thing you do is to set it up in terms of 0 datum with the power module on. So basically, you either fit the power module or a blanking piece, and in day-to-day use, when you're not measuring data, you just have the blanking piece in place. And when you want the force data and the angle data and everything else, you fit this module. So you set it up on the boat with this module fitted, and the setup information is then stored in an RFID chip in the oarlock, like when you have your dog or cat chip, they insert this little glass capsule. So it has one of those in every oarlock. So when you come back, even with a different power meter, a power module, and put it on, that data is grabbed by the power module.
All right.
So, and to change it, all you have to do is to change the power module to a blanking module. You just spin out one screw, take that off, and fit that. Well, fit it right around, get my brain together. Right, fit it like that. So in day-to-day use, it would be like that, one screw in, and when you want to use it as a fully configured power meter, you just fit that instead.
That's awesome.
That is so simple.
Yeah.
And then the other advantages are with the current system, you can't use clips to adjust height. So the boat has to be set up with a standard height, and you get, if you're your height, or my height, you get in the boat and it's just impossible to row, isn't it?
Yeah.
You need to put all the clips in, go right up. So with this, you can put the clips in, move it up and down without affecting any of the setup information. And you can use inserts to change the pitch. So Peach do sell special, you can buy it with a certain pitch, but you can't just clip in insert. So
no, it's if you've, some people might not see the snippets. If you've coached or rowed or tried to set boats up in like a lower just club fun environment, the idea of being able to do those things, if you've ever done pitches on the pins on a 15-year-old 8. The idea of not being able to use inserts, things like that, stuff that just makes it so simple. And like you said, you're talking about people that are volunteering their time often. The politics, the club politics of who gets to use what equipment that can rip a club apart. So be able to have a piece of equipment that could be used, those kind of things. It's awesome. And I think this just completely goes back to what we were saying, developing products in an area that you guys are passionate about. You cannot, there's no way you're going to have a product like this and this that makes this much sense if you're not on the ground.
I think, one of the things
in it.
Other things that's really exciting about this product is that, historically, this functionality is available, but as you say, it kind of stays on the top boat, whatever that is in the club. But actually making this accessible to people that have just started rowing, you can then really start to see much faster improvements.
Yes.
And if you give them access to that data, and clubs can justify giving novice rowers access to that data because it can be switched over that quickly, I think that's kind of a really exciting thing, that just to see that kind of happen, see how that data can be used by coaches with novices.
Yeah, and you can show people what they're doing, and even in terms of a commitment in the stroke, people can think they're trying, but it takes a long time in rowing to learn how to really try. But if you can show somebody that, in the boat, they're only delivering 100 watts or whatever, that's a useful thing, when on the erg, they're probably able to do quite a lot more.
Yeah.
And then you can work with them to actually get them to be able to apply that power in the boat.
Yeah. Well, it comes down to that instant feedback. On the rowing machine, you instantly see what you're doing. You see the power curves and everything. And what you've got here is obviously a complete solution now, because you've got the data measuring device on both ends, and then you've also got a display that collects it and then can export it and then sort of create your own little ecosystem, which is
the usability that's key. It's being able to actually use it. Peak system, it's been around for 50. I remember when he launched it at Henley, and people were almost, it wasn't understood. People were not laughing, but it was just seen as something. I could buy half a boat for that. It was just completely not understood. And a couple of years previously, Weber, who are an Austrian company who make similar stuff, came to one of the ARA coaching conferences, and nobody talked to them. Nobody was interested. And yet now it's completely understood, and everyone knows about force curves, and
it's
interesting how the world moves on.
And how people learn as well. You kind of, in rowing, there's this thing of that person's got really good boat feel, and it's what does that actually mean? Does that mean that they've picked up the rowing stroke very quickly? They learn just feel very easily, but are there athletes out there that learn by seeing tangible things in front of them? Being able to see your power curve and your catch and finish angles straight off the go, live and go. If that's how you learn, if that's naturally like the process that you learn, like how many athletes kind of gave up because they weren't getting better, but actually could have been incredible, but they just didn't have that kind of natural feel for it.
Yeah, not
like,
everyone does.
Straight out the gun. Yeah, it's kind of. Yeah, I think it kind of opens up opportunities for people as well, which I think is quite exciting.
Yeah, I think for me, like from a coaching perspective, like what I enjoyed the most was seeing someone in a situation or struggle with something or a technical thing that had taken me year, like this thing had taken, I finally got it, and I worked on this for a long time, and whether that be I had to work on like my own strength, my core strengths or something like that, and be like, I can give you like a cheat code now, like I can give you this bit of information that's taken me 10 years to learn. So it's all well and good saying like, just go and learn boat field. But like learning boat field takes a really, really long time.
Yeah. And just like the way you kind of like approach it as well. I think like you can say one thing and 5 athletes will be like, right, yeah, I've got that. Completely understand it. 5 athletes will be like, no idea what you're talking about.
and the difference might be they just need a little pointer to see, okay, cool, like at the catch, you're just slipping a little bit too much. Like your angle isn't quite right. So having that little piece of information that can like be almost instantly deliverable, because a coach can see it on their active flow and then instantly communicate that to that rower. And I think, like you said, you never know how many people aren't going to give up because of that.
Yeah. No, and they can see it. The rower in the boat, you could set the display so it shows their catch slip. Well, there's not much arguing, is there? The coach can be saying, well, you're rowing it in, you're not placing them and pushing. But if there's a number on screen and, you're over 7-8 degrees, sure. It's proven. Yeah.
So the idea is for every rower to have this at their seat? Or?
They have to have one at their seat to gather the data. They don't necessarily have to see the data, or, it's up to the coach what they want them to see.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. And that's an important point. You don't want everyone going down the river staring at their force curve all the time.
Yeah, just developing.
That's right.
Yeah, it's the same. Yeah. I think the other thing for me as well is to combine that kind of like speeding up the learning curve with also like, I think a lot of clubs kind of short-sighted in terms of like, they're just the novices. Yeah. This year's novices, you're going to win Henley for you in 5 years' time. So,
I think that's some clubs do really
3
well.
years' time if you coach them properly.
Yeah, and if you've got equipment,
like
exactly, and if you don't have the funding, you're not as big a club. You don't have that ability. You have less. Like we've spoken to some rowers, even at the top level. We spoke to Emma Dyke from the New Zealand rowing team. Like, how did New Zealand do really well with such limited numbers? Well, we really look after everyone on an individual basis, and that means if you don't have the numbers. They don't, yet they have the ability to compete on that world stage. If you take that to a club level in the UK, like you don't, if you're doing things right, if you're spending money in the right way, if you have the right equipment, if you're looking after people, you can do a lot with a lot less than everyone else. And I think that's what you guys basically are like facilitating.
Yeah, you want a way that everyone has access to what the top people have, but without the money.
Yeah, and that's what it comes to, because we love this sport, and when we fell in love with it, and if you can help other people fall in love with it, like that's...
I coach a range of crews, and when you get towards the top end, it gets much harder to coach them. I've coached a lightweight veteran crew, and one of the women had won Henley Women 10 times.
Wow.
What are you going to give? Yeah, what to do? I mean, they're incredibly grateful, incredibly receptive.
Yeah.
But there's only little things, whereas if we were looking at their force curves, it'd be much easier to coach them.
Even if you've got 8 fantastic athletes, having equipment like this gives you ability to match them, like lining up those force curves, those kind of things. Like,
or in the angles, you by eye lining up catch and finish angles in an A. Not easy.
Whilst riding a bike, whilst avoiding people.
Put your straws on, it still doesn't give you it. Whereas if you can see all their numbers, you just say, you move your feet 20 centimetres back, 20 millimetres back.
Well, and the great thing is how easy it is to like mount on and off. Like whenever you do want to do the testing, I was just going to say that's like one unique selling point, really, USP, like that, a generalized company is not going to have. Because they'll say, okay, well, you just put this on a boat and it's going to work like this, but you don't know the intricacies of the sport, of how clubs are run, of how little time there is in training sessions for faff and to put equipment on and off. Because if you add something that takes, for example, 5 minutes extra to set up, over the course of the year, if you do like, say, 6 rowing sessions a week on the water, That adds up. That's a session.
But, these systems have been around since the late 1800s. They've been mechanical force measuring systems. And in the 50s, they became electrical ones.
Oh, that's fascinating.
Yeah. And the coach I used to coach with, he was coaching for the Moscow Olympics, and I think it was an Imperial College system. There was an oscilloscope on the bank, and you could live see the force curves of the crew going past. But that's not a product.
Yeah.
That's the problem. And then it was only probably, Peach and Valeri came along, and it sort of became a product. But it still hasn't become a usable product for an average club. So that's the problem. That's what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
Make it a usable product for an average club.
Yeah. I like that. And I think, like you said, from where we've been, the school I rowed at had, like 4 boats that were 20 years old, and we had 10 people that rowed in it. And then obviously I've gone on and I rowed at Leander, and I spent time in the team. So having like been through all sort of levels and then coached at a few different levels as well, you can see that it's a sport. I think it's a sport that a lot of people are attracted to it for the reason that you get to see a lot of these incremental gains. You get to see yourself improving a lot, certainly in terms of like the ergo or a kilo more on your bench press, and there are all these kind of different ways to see it.
It seems like attainable as well, I think, because it's like, like 6 minutes and 6 minutes 30 doesn't sound like a huge amount in your head when you first set out, and then you realise.
But all of those things are quite limited to like being in the gym, and then like we go out on the water and it's this kind of mythical thing. There's this one way to do it, and you try and do it, and if you can get a bit of video feedback, that's great.
It's like this full picture is like you can suddenly, it doesn't mean you have to use it all the time, but actually if you suspect as a coach, something's going on, let's stick it on for this outing, and then you can actually identify something pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And people will believe you, if you can show them they're missing 12, 15 degrees at the catch, they can't fail to believe you.
I think that's
whereas at the moment, they'll just think, well, this is how I row.
Yeah. It's very, from that perspective, I agree. It's, your coach says you got to get the blade in earlier. And then you say you make a change, and your coach says, you haven't made a change. You're like, I've made such a change. And then there's the video analysis, like, no, you haven't. You're like, oh my God, is that me? I swear.
I don't row like that.
Yeah. What it feels like in your head.
It's
so different to what it is.
But this is the thing, we're talking about such complicated things here, like 15 degrees at a catch angle and everything. Like, I'm pretty sure everyone who listens to the podcast already knows I'm from Poland, and I learned to row there. We didn't have stroke coaches in my club. There was
at all.
At all, no. So there was one girl who had parents who bought her a stroke coach, and like she was a great single sculler. I think she's gone to row at America, one of my teammates from back there. But we didn't have a stroke coach, so we'd do like rate-based pieces, and my coach would just go follow us around on the launch with a stopwatch, and like every so often he'd be like 27, 29, down a bit, and he's trying to focus on so many things, but I can't remember who we were speaking to recently, but like until stroke coaches and things like that were invented, rowing was just like if you were on an ergo and you put the screen down and just kind of blind rowing. You don't really know what's going on, and they can enhance your training in so many different ways. And to get it to the point like you guys have where, it can tell you that you're 15 degrees off at a catch angle, I think it's just, it's substantial in terms of like how that's going to like push the sport on, because there's so much to be gained even from like just knowing how quickly you're rowing per minute. Like at a race, like most of my races I've done, I didn't, like before I moved to the UK, I didn't have a stroke coach, so it was just all blood.
The race profile, so you can actually see what speed you were doing throughout the race. Because your average speed, because how long it took and what the distance. But to actually see the profile of the race is incredibly interesting. Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. Like one of my first races, as a junior, I've stroked a double, and then we kind of like had like our own internal club trials going on, and we were on the Lake Malta in Poznań, in Poland. So my coach after the race told me like, "Why did you rate so high?" I'm like, "What do you mean? Like, how high was our rating?" He's like, 37. He's like, "Okay, well, what's wrong with that?" And he's like, well, if you put it down to 32, you wouldn't be slowing the boat down so much by just like rushing up the slide. And like, this is the thing, like you just had no idea. And I think making this accessible, to 5 continents like you guys have, to pretty much everyone in the rowing world, like that's good. That's gonna be great for the future of the sport. And we never know how many athletes potentially who don't have access to the best coaching or the best facilities, they can still learn how to analyze their own data and almost like self-coach themselves, like possibly from continents like South America, from Africa, etc. And we can see rowing become like more ubiquitous across the globe.
Yeah, I think also as well, like you said, if Jürgen Grobler comes and tells you to do something, it's pretty easy that you're going to do it. But, if it's some volunteer coach, like whether, certain clubs and whatever, like you don't know if they know what they're talking about, or even if they do, like it's difficult to trust always in that. And I would say even from the other perspective, as a coach, I find it really difficult even to trust in my own eye, or, I think I know who our top 8 is going to be, but I'm not just going to choose. I want to make sure we do some seat racing or we look at some data and those kind of things. And I think, like you said, like builds trust. It's going to build trust in everyone, in ability. You get to, oh no, I was right. I did see some catch in it, and I was right. Mm-hmm. So it's not just about rowers getting better. It's about coaches getting better, and about like streamlining that whole process, because you can kind of, again, like you said, just reaffirm what you thought. Without,
I think you can make like informed decisions. You can back up your decision as well. And I think that's like very important as well. Like especially, I think at any level, like people are putting a lot of time, effort, and energy into rowing, and so like it's really hard if you don't make a boat, and you do want to know why, and you want to have reasons for not making that boat. So like if a coach can then say, like, I'm not just saying this, like, here's the data to back up my decisions. It's then like a lot more like easy to accept that. And you're like, okay, like that's fair enough. And you move on. But I think being able to make those informed decisions, and I think in like so many ways, it can be sort of beneficial as well. And even at the top end, like I think, I don't know, you might tell me otherwise, but I'm imagining even in these big programs, even at Caversham, when they break down into pairs for trials and things, data's not getting collected. It's probably staying on the 8. So actually, like
it's on Hardin Reed's pair. It's not on my pair.
But if you could just do it, like if you could just go in and grab it yourself, then you're self-coaching, because actually, like it's like, again, it's like that's your job essentially. That's your livelihood. Like if you can then just flick it onto your new boat, onto your pair, and then you can gain that data, and you, even if you're self-coaching, like it's giving you an extra edge. I think.
Yeah, I know I need to work on my catch slip.
Yeah,
I can now do it, whereas you can't do that by yourself, can you? Just sitting in a boat.
No.
It's like,
it spreads from
it, but you don't know whether you succeeded.
Yeah, you got such like a short period as well, probably before trials, to kind of try and gel with somebody that you may not have rowed with before. If you can then stick that on and be like, okay, these are 3 things that we've identified that we can work on.
And data expires too, right? Because like if you look at your training data that you've collected from like 3 months ago, well, you're a different athlete now. Your stroke probably changed a little bit. Like there's a certain like number of days until like it's still like useful or relevant. And like to the point that you said, where if all this data is being collected but is not being then analyzed or not even like looked at, well, that's your information that could have won you the gold medal. If you're choosing not to look at it because it's like too hard to access or things like that, well, that's where the medal is, and that's where the difference can be found potentially.
Valeri, he goes out to programs, he does all this testing, but he may not go back for another 6 months or a year. And what's happening in that gap? I mean, he's brilliant. We've done projects with him, we work with him, and he's brilliant. He knows more than anyone, probably. I'm sure some people may differ, but he knows a great deal. But he does this intense testing. You know everything about your rowing at that one snapshot in time. But that's completely useless, because a week later you don't know whether you've moved on, and a month later, as you're saying, you don't know whether you moved on. And so it's to get it into people's hands on a daily basis is what we've been trying to achieve.
So we're talking about Valerie Kleshner from BioRow.
Sorry.
Yeah, because for like our stateside listeners and that.
Oh, well, no, there's a lot of stuff in the States.
True.
Yeah, and again, like at lower, a more fun clubs, or I say lower level clubs, but like no disrespect on people who are doing it to that level, who, not everyone can do 14 sessions a day and commit in that way. And some people want to enjoy rowing more, and rowing at that level isn't as enjoyable. But in terms of that, a lot of the people, like you said, in terms of coaching yourself and coaching each other, like having the ability to, someone who's coaching one day who's sat in a boat can help. There's that data that goes in with it. And also it's like, from my perspective, coaching, as a low end coach, when you get given one crew, that's great. I'm just looking after one crew and you can have your eyes on all the time. And then you become a head coach and now you've got 15 crews on the water and you can't do that. So like finding those ways to be able to spread the load, quite often in clubs, coaches can't be there for every session and they can't, they've got other things they need to do. They're volunteers, whatever. We've discussed things like, quite often erg sessions, they'll have maybe the cocks will take the erg session or they'll someone else, or they'll be self coached from that kind of aspect. So to have the ability to go on the water and have that feedback even when a coach isn't there, I think it's like super valuable. I think for me, I quite kind of get stuck a little bit more in my mind of like being at Leander and always having everything on the top end level that I was rowing at. But like, we spend a lot of time going around to all those other clubs and actually like, that's not how it is for everyone. And this equipment, like I wish I had it a bit, when I was rowing. I think it would have made a huge difference.
That's why we get so excited about it, and it is patented, and it is. We've got a number of patents, but it's about the only one we sort of genuinely believe in, as it were. We've often patented things and thought, well, why do we bother? In fact, Concept 2 say that they Dreisacker brothers, they don't even think it was worthwhile patenting their own.
Well, there's quite a few Chinese copies.
The benefit they got from patenting it, they feel is less than the cost of what they've done. It's quite true.
When I was at school, we got a few peach gates, same thing, right? It just sat on the first day. No one else ever got anywhere near it. Luckily, we had a great maths teacher, my first rowing coach, Rob Gibson. Shout out. I don't know. But yeah, he was really good at, because at that time, like I said, it's just data. Like, who knows what's going on? He was really good at sort of pulling it together. But I can't remember why. We used to do this. We used to go out and he wouldn't have it on from the start. Maybe the battery wasn't great or whatever. Anyway, so he would, at some point during the outing, he didn't want us to know that we were being recorded because he didn't want us to change the way. So at some point during the outing, he'd give the Cox the nod or whatever. Cox reaches down and presses the button, doesn't say to everyone else, but Strokeman's seen him do it. So my coach would say, so we'd go off on this next run and I'm in the launch and I can see Strokeman absolutely giving it everything. 20 seconds later, 7 is like, it must feel. So 10 seconds later, 7's going, then 6 is out, and he says, meanwhile, Bowman's just like, he's like 2 minutes behind. So the best job you did at trying not to get us to row differently. But then that was quite often because it was super limited. There would be like limited amount of sessions and times. Yeah, it's like, right, we've got the gate on today. And then you end up tensing up, doing everything mental. I need to get the best watts. Yeah. It's like you say, having something that's like, we can have that this week, next week, Saturday, second session, whenever.
I think as well, like long-term trends as well, like to kind of going back is quite an interesting thing as well. I think as well, like especially in terms of like measuring load on the water as well. Like it's very easy to sort of measure your training load on land, doing an erg, your heart rate monitor. But if you can start sort of gathering that data as well, like
in cycling,
you can really like real benefits for your training and also injury prevention, like looking at like how much strain you are actually putting on your body when you're out on the water, which is actually quite a big time, like a big proportion of the training.
Training is a heart rate.
So I think there's lots to be sort of learned in terms of gathering that data and looking at trends and things.
That really kind of builds into when you look at like what is the next step in sports in general, but they look at rowing. Well, they can't train any harder. Like you cannot physically do any more.
The top one.
We've got psychologists, physiologists. Caversham has. When I was there, I had like 2 dedicated guys who just did peach data and put the reports out. You have physios, you have access to physios, almost every day.
Nutritionists.
Like you can't really eat any better. You can't sleep anymore. Like where is like the move? And I think certainly like I'll talk about things like Red S, overtraining, those kind of things coming in. Like it's quite prevalent that like actually you can't just add 10% more to the program, add a bit more mileage. And I think that's why for us, like it's been really interesting to see the tech and like obviously come here and talk to you guys about this really is the path forward, I think, in terms of like using technology to actually, because better, like more isn't always better, you know. And I think in rowing, it's really, there's almost this badge of honor of, you know, well, I did more mileage or I did more watts or I did this. Yeah, but what actually would be like better for you? Like, should you be trying to hit the same scores as the guy who's 20 kilos heavier, you know, and 5 years more mature in his training?
I think, yeah, that's the big one in rowing as well, isn't it? Because you all sit down next to each other and you're looking at splits, but you're physically very different. And people, take training very differently. Their bodies react very differently. And so when you can sort of start to understand how your body reacts to training, what sort of training is good for your body, and then you can start to individualize that training, that's where I think gains are like really easily makeable. But yeah, it's very hard when you rock up in a gym and you're around 20 peers and you're like, I want to pull harder than them, even if it's a 16k UT. Well, supposed to be an easy session. It's very easy to kind of
competitive.
Competitive. So
injuries is the worst thing. You know? So my son both rode as well as juniors at Barlow, and there were boys at 16 with serious back injuries. That's obscene.
Yeah,
I mean that is just abuse, you know.
It can get pretty bad, you know, and it's difficult because the type of people that are attracted to high end sport will run themselves into the ground. That by their nature, they will do what they're told.
Need to be told.
Yeah, and they will keep going.
Yeah.
So as a coach, I think there is a responsibility to try and do that.
To do the right things, you know. You know, with ergs, for instance, you know, I'm not talking about what we're talking about, but you know, to spend hours on static ergs is pretty dangerous.
Yeah. I remember
it was a young age when your body's growing.
Yeah, definitely.
And if you can get that same training benefit going out on a bike and doing a lot of that mileage on a bike and actually reducing mileage on ergs, and like if you get data that shows that, okay, I can still get to the same fitness level through doing that, I'm putting a lot less stress on my body. I think that's only a good thing.
I mean, also
more efficient.
Yeah, and if you look at why, like I always find it fascinating. I think in rowing, like we massively overuse the indoor training machine. I think it's hilarious. Like imagine if like British cycling are holding their first trial and everyone goes up to Boston, first British cycling trial, and they say, tomorrow we're going to race on the road in our bikes, but today we're going to do a test on the watt bike in the gym. And if you're not good enough on the watt bike, you don't even get to go on the road. And that's the first trial in GB. If you don't hit, and I know there's a performance, there's basically sort of a cut-off of saying if you don't have the fitness of this level, etc. But I think like it was wild. I can't think there's
and
any
they're not
other
weight adjusting euros, are they?
No.
So that's absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah.
You know, if you're 10 kilograms heavier, you should have to achieve a much better score.
Yeah.
You know, and the science is all out there. The formula is out there. And the top, rowing organisation in the country isn't using it.
Yeah.
What the hell? I used to use it in colleges in Oxford,
Yeah.
And it gives you the right results, or much more right results.
Yeah, so it's definitely overused. But then again, I think maybe, why is it overused? And then you think, obviously, like, as a piece of equipment, it is very, you can sit on each one and get very similar scores. There is the feedback, the data, those kind of things. Is it a case that if, like, data on the water was more accessible, would people have less of a need to use the rowing machine? So I feel like maybe that's why it gets used a lot, because coaches I can see exactly what they're doing. I can guarantee that they're working hard. It's that thing like, we went out for a 16k, but who was just like fluffing the puddles and who was actually sending it?
Well, he was hiding behind the island for 4k.
Well, that was me.
There's a story in America that one of the boat builders was developing a power measurement system, and they lent it to a boat club, Green Lake, that we know very well. And the crew that had it on their boat always won the pieces. Always, whoever was in the boat, the people who had the power measurement system always won, because it was motivational. You knew you were being looked at. That's quite interesting. And these were good kids. These were 16 to 18-year-olds, but it's still very interesting.
I did in 2012. I did the European 8. So while the Olympic squad was away, we were training at Caversham. So we would get to use some of the beach data stuff. And it's my first senior event. I thought I was sending it, and I get sat down with the coach, and they look at the data, and they're like, "You're not working as hard as everyone else." Jesus. And then every day you get in the boat, and you look down, and you see the cables, and you're like, "Okay, so put it on again." But yeah, obviously, like there's a, but in some ways, is that, like I said, from when we use it at school, is it good that the one with the data always wins? Because that means they're probably doing something that they're not doing when they don't have it.
I think even with kids who are fairly fresh into it, they weren't trying on, which is part of rowing. Is trying really hard is part of rowing.
Yeah. I find it funny. You get to that point when you've got the novices, and you're like, we can row now. We've got it. Kind of, we've got the system. We're put together. We're coming in and out of the time together, and it's kind of looking quite good now. And you get the stopwatch on, and you're like, Jesus,
how can you go that slowly?
Okay, we've forgotten we've forgotten we're supposed to be pulling. Like, it looks lovely now. It's great, but now we have to actually pull.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's one of the other things, I guess, is like probably one of the dangers actually as well is like when you put Peach on, for example, everybody pulls really hard. Also, there's probably like a blanket number, or like coach has been like, oh, well, we need to be over 200 watts for this session, but actually like that should be different for each rower. Like,
yeah, we are going to have the software, the firmware unit, we weight adjustable, so you get to.
Oh no, I'm screwed.
That's right. Been there.
That's good for you. Again, that's the one that
That's good for me.
When I was at school, I feel like
It's good for the boat.
for everybody, yeah, it's like,
yeah. I feel like weight adjusted stuff used to be used a bit more in the past, and it just disappeared.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to use the right form. It's not what's been going around.
Yeah.
Not like a hill climbing.
It's not cycling, yeah.
But it's a simple formula. There's no reason not to use it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely, I mean, the age of the 120 kilo Matt Pinson athlete is over, really.
I'm sure he would have had a very good waist adjusted air score.
Still.
Not quite. Oh, no, not still.
Not now. Back then.
Obviously.
I mean, maybe we need to ask him what he's been up to.
This is one thing that I'm quite interested about. Like, obviously, it's quite funny. I sort of came up, right? So I went to Leander in sort of 2008. I was this high. I was 6'8", but I weighed about 86 kilos. So I was like an absolute beanpole. And it was right. You got to be 100 kilos and you got to be sub 6. 100 kilos, sub 6. 100 kilos, sub 6. Spent the next 3 years trying to do that. I get to about 97 kilos and I go sub 6. What do you think, coach? No. You got to be 92 kilos, 555. Like that. And it was like this SWAT. Like I felt like every time I hit the market, like it was moved again. But like, it's definitely, power to weight is a huge thing. It's coming a lot more. Look at athletes like Matt Gottrell. Even like people like Will Satch, like all those guys that came up there. They're
like Imogen.
Yeah. Well, this is what my point I was going to make. So like heavyweight athletes are 90 to 95 kilos. Maybe most of he's sitting at 100 a bit more, something like that. But the weights are coming down. Power to weight's becoming really important. I'm really interested to see what happens now. Lightweight rowing's been taken out. Are some of those lightweight rows? I feel like the gap is smaller. Yeah, I'd love to see some of those lightweight. Are you, if you could eat whatever you wanted and you're going to put 5 or 6 kilos muscles on? Because I was saying this to Pete the other day. I came up with someone like John O'Clegg and as a junior, Kieran Emery. I don't know if people know who they are now, but John went to Rio. Kieran has spent some time in the team as a senior world champion, I think, in a lightweight pair. When there is no lightweight at junior, these guys were killing me. And then we go to under 23 and some of their lightweight. I'm thinking, thank God, I wouldn't I wouldn't have beaten those two guys. Obviously, I'd improved. I put a bit more weight on my frame and things like that. But certainly, I can remember lightweight athletes and thinking that I am so happy. Yeah, we used to do that Saturday morning trial. Everyone in your singles, lightweights are winning almost all the time.
On all the percentages, yeah.
I would love to see lightweight athletes not limiting themselves to 72 kilos and having a crack at rowing. And I think that could be even more have an impact on this power to weight stuff.
Well, you've already read with people like Chris Boddy, who's the coach at Sir William Perkins. Like, he's been a lightweight. And
so he was lightweight at GB level, then retired from lightweight rowing, put some muscle on, got into the men's heavyweight 8 Leander in 2015.
Something like that.
Yeah. 2015 won the ladies' plate, Leander, as a previous lightweight. 2016. Yeah.
I guess it'd be interesting to see as well, in those circumstances, with yourself, if you hadn't had the pressure to put on weight, but actually just seen what your body got to as a natural weight, but actually saw okay, maybe you might not have gone as fast on the erg, but being 10 kilos lighter, would you have made a boat go faster?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you just
Exactly.
you don't know, like how many athletes are out there like that.
So much weight is put on this
Yeah, like this actually, like you're not going to break through
this unless it's weight adjusted. It's absolutely meaningless.
I rode with a guy, Alistair Webb. Shout out, it's a really small guy, maybe 85 kilos as a heavyweight man, and just from like September to March is just getting berated. Like, your scores aren't good enough, you're not good enough, you're not lifting enough weight, you're not doing this, you're not doing that, you're not there, you're not here, not there. First set of seat racing, beats everyone on that. And he did this 2 years in a row, and I still watch the coach being like, you need to get better erg scores, you need to get better, and then you just go and beat everyone, and you're just like,
coaching. That's all it is. Coaching.
yeah. I mean, I think maybe it's the limit of what they've had access to, and like I said, like hopefully these kind of things could change that.
Changing that mentality as well, I think.
I think it's a mentality.
Yeah, you've got to shift away from that erg score is everything and being heavy is everything. Like, it's, I think as well, like you got to look at like the health implications of it as well. Like, I think it's done well, it's absolutely fine. Like, I think, yeah, but then you're also putting like a lot of pressure on maybe some people to lose weight or put on weight when actually that's not the healthiest thing for them to do.
Weights stuff isn't always useful. I mean, Yale don't do any weights at the moment.
Yeah.
They're quite well.
And
I mean, obviously those guys go in with a certain level of strength, but for rowing you only need to be strong enough. You know, you don't get faster just by getting stronger.
They think the maximum, was it about 80, 90 kilos, isn't it? Like the actual maximum load you can put through.
So off the start it's 150 kilos, and then it comes down to even lower than what you're saying.
Okay. You've got the
But
fact.
it's only 150 for a few strokes,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah.
So you have to be strong enough, but you don't get faster as you get stronger without developing the aerobic side.
Yeah, and I mean also sort of talking about, so obviously we've lost lightweight rowing, which sucks because it was it's great to watch, but from the perspective of keeping rowing in the Olympics, I can see, because they've had for a long time, there's been discussions about, is it accessible enough? Is it too expensive? Kind of other countries get in it. Beach sprint seems to me like a great way to get it more accessible. Some people are not going to be into it as much. But the reality is, like, how many people are going to want to keep doing this sport if you sort of guaranteed to come out the back end of it with an injury? And from my time in the senior team, and it's not anyone's fault, I guess, if you get up at that level, at the end of the day, injuries are part of it. But from my time there, I don't think there's anyone I rode with who hasn't had an operation, or at least steroid injections and things like that, and that's taken it to the extreme level. But if we love this sport and if we want it to keep going, I think there's an onus on the people involved in it to try and make sure that other people are going to want to come and do this, because it's quite hard. A lot of the training's pretty horrible. There are some great bits about it, but there's some nasty bits about it, and if people don't want to come and do it, if we can't make it safe and enjoyable, how long is it going to go for?
Yeah, really big thing. And I think, like not even at the top end. Like, I'd say, like, my back was really bad at one point. Like, I've had injections, I've had all sorts, and it's not uncommon. Like, I'm not, it's not a rare case. Like, rowing as a whole, I think, has to look at itself.
It's far too many.
It's just way too many injuries, and it's not rocket science. Like, the knowledge is there to prevent it. It's just has to change, and that change has to come. Like, it's not easy, but that change has to happen, because you can't, especially with young kids getting into the sport, you just can't have them having back problems at that age. Like, it's that fundamentally has to change.
Yeah, it's difficult. Like, coaching at university level, seeing athletes really struggling with their back and trying to continue training, and I sat down and being like, but you're also at university to study, and you're going to have to sit down and study, and if
got a whole life ahead of you.
If you can't even sit down to do your study, like this, honestly, rowing's not that important. Like,
yeah.
But
you get so like wound up into it. Like,
it's a wonderful sport, but it's not what major injuries for.
If
they're not essential.
I guess it's funny. I also saw, like, from setting a program, I sort of started out with a program, increased a bit of mileage, a bit of weights, a bit here, and like I specifically remember like a point where I did a bit of an increase over Christmas and then started seeing injuries, and was like, oh, like I could like physically see like where that limit was for those athletes. And as a coach, I felt really
guilty.
Yeah. I was like, I feel really, I've suffered myself like heavily with back problems and things like that, and certainly was not happy about that. And like you said, it's about terms of trying to find other ways to, like cross training. I don't know why, again in rowing, why cross training is very much frowned upon almost.
Yeah.
If my coach didn't see me in the boat do the session, if I was in the pool because my back hurt, I may as well not been there because he doesn't think I've done any training.
Yeah, it's about being able to like correlate the data to like all the backlogs that you already have, like from rowing machines, from water sessions, and like in order to prevent injuries, I think we need to maximize the effectiveness of the training that is available to us, because like we already said, like the answer is not to do 10% more each Olympic cycle, it's to make the most of what you've got, which is what I think tools that you've developed and are obviously developing for the sport really do help that. And hopefully they might not just make you go faster, but hopefully they'll be able to like prevent some injuries, because looking at individual force curves of an athlete in the boat, you can see, okay, you doing this way too front loaded, and like you're not rocked over enough, for example. So your back might be under a lot of like different stress. So for example, if you worked with sports scientists, I'm not saying you don't already do, like Valerie and other people, like there could be a way to possibly maybe collect some data to say, okay, wow, if we combine those certain readings of that athlete with what we see with video analysis, etc., like, cool, this is possibly going to like lead to an injury, and that can be now prevented. So there's lots of things that we don't even like know what's going to like come from like actually taking rowing under a bit of a microscope with some more data analytics. And so it's really exciting to like see how we're going to do in the future. But also like talking about beat sprints, right? We were speaking with Al Sinclair in Scotland, and then he said, like, you got big guys like Charles Cousins who are like 6'6" or taller than that, massive monsters, absolute units. And then you have people who are 75 kilos, and actually they can be like quite head-to-head, going head-to-head in the race. And you don't know what's going to happen. It's a bit more unpredictable. And like we were talking about, possibly lightweight athletes, if they gained like 6 or 7 kilos, found their natural limit, be able to express themselves at their weight, possibly that might even out the sport a little bit more. So we don't know this unless we conduct like more and more testing, but without wasting any training sessions, we just need to be collating more of that data that's already out there, because that's where the medals are.
When we spoke to Imogen last week, I asked her whether she would be tempted to go heavyweight after this next Olympics, and she was like, maybe.
Oh wow! Sweet.
That'll come out before this comes out. I haven't ruined it.
Yeah, that's a very interesting point. Yeah.
So in terms of like your range of products, I've realized we've not actually like touched upon like everything that you're doing. So you're doing things, the products, like I'm hoping you can talk us through the range. Like they come from, you're able to set boats up better. You're able to have different footwear, stroke coaches, meters.
Yeah, I mean, we probably not to our good, we're product driven. So if we have an idea, or, in the initial days, somebody suggests an idea, that's what we do. We have to think it has some sort of commercial benefit, something we could at least not lose money on. So, we've just done some spacers, pin spacers that you can literally fit with one hand. And if you do align them to the direction of the boat, they nominally give you a foot advantage over a 2K course. So we'll do it just because it's a good idea, and we'll think, well, we're never going to make any money at that, but so what? So it's a mixture of things, but we have 5 or 6 things that we are looking at, and probably 2 or 3 of those will become products we sell, and probably 1 or 2 of those will be commercially successful enough to, sort of believe in. So I suppose, we were wondering how to demonstrate this is where, the last product we have been developing came from. So
talking about the gate.
Yeah, the gate. When we show this first time at Henley or Marlow or wherever, how do you demonstrate it? And when then Kay demonstrated their Empower Oarlock the first time, they had it on a swingulator, but our product doesn't work on a swingulator. So so I just started thinking about how could you demonstrate it, and that's where the idea of a rowing simulator came about. And there have been loads of rowing simulators since, pre-biblical times. There's a mention of one which was used for training galley slaves for rowing.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
brilliant. And if you see photos of the Titanic, there are rowing simulators on the Titanic.
No.
Yeah, hydraulic ones, yeah. Yeah.
Amazing.
So there've always been them, but they've always been too expensive and taken up too much space. So we had the idea that whether you could take a standard erg, put it on a base, turn it into a rowing simulation when you wanted it, and just in 30 seconds disconnect it and have it back as a rowing erg, when you didn't want it, And that's something we showed at Henry last year and something we're still working on. And, we don't think it's going to become one of our best-selling products, as it were. But, there's a lot of interest and some potential orders. But, it needs a bit more work. So next year it will come back in a more developed form. So it's all about, people go into this and they think, no, that's not fair. But, you have to consider the whole picture. You can't just think, I've got this technical idea, I can make it, people want to buy it. Because that's not how it works. You've got to think about the practicality in a club situation. And, the guy, Aram in Austria, who's selling a rowing simulator, but it takes up more than the space of this desk, So how many is a rowing club going to buy, even if they buy them? And you can't do your standard Concept 2 type workouts on it. So, we'd always be looking at the whole picture. And that's not always been true. We've made some pretty clever, pretty poor mistakes along the way. But now we understand it. You've got to look at the whole picture. And there's no point in converting an erg into a sweet rowing machine and it stays as a sweet rowing machine because the club has lost an erg.
Yeah.
And it takes up a load of space.
And that works with this?
No, it doesn't. No, ironically. But it came out of it. Okay, and these ideas come out of, and it's not just me, and it's, other people come. People come to us with ideas.
Yeah.
But apart from that first product, there's never been one that we've taken on.
The one that this year that I went through was mirrors. So we spent so many times in gyms. So every rowing club's got like everything that you can buy off the shelf. It's more like a vertical standing mirror. Yep. There's some do it for like ballet rooms or dance classes, like a vertical mirror. It'll go on wheels, but it doesn't work for rowing because you need to be longer to have the rowing stroke. So everyone's got all these homemade mirrors. Everything's going on. And I was speaking to Morgan Byron-Williams, who was coaching in the GB team. And he said the head women's coach, they had this mirror. They didn't really like it. They wanted a mirror. And I was like, this is a product. You see it in every rowing club. It's always some homemade, like Frankenstein thing. Some of them are sort of adjustable. Someone's got some level of adjustment on or not. I thought, I'm sure I can do this. I'm sure I can do it. And then you start looking into it, like U-channel metal frame. And then do you have, how thin do you go with the mirror? Do you have it on a backboard? How heavy can it be? And then you think, if it's toughened glass, and then it gets more like heavier, then all of a sudden you're like, it's 80, 90, 100 kilos. That's not you. And then, you like the actual process of going through all these things. I was convinced to start with that this would be a great product. And like every gym uses it. I know I could make one, we could have a locking system. So the angle, you could get exactly how you wanted it. But then you actually sort of go through the process and think, well, if this is going to be like safe, for someone to fall into or put their hands through and things like that, all of a sudden it's over 100 kilos. How is that getting moved across the gym? And then you just kind of back to like, I can see why everyone's just built their own now.
Yeah. And even if you sort of got there, there's another, there's nothing wrong with what you've done and, we'd go through the same process. But then there's another level of keeping going. You could have kept going and you might have found a better solution, possibly.
Well, it was things like, how do you make the mirror piece removable? Do you lock the top in? Because like, should someone eventually is going to break this thing? Like, do you have the whole frame welded, or do you have two bolts on the inside so that the thing can be slid down?
How are you going to deliver it?
Delivery, and you start looking at the expense
of that. Are you going to cover your costs? And are people really going to need different sizes?
Yeah.
It's literally 10 times more difficult than people think.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean that we're clever. We just don't give up,
Yeah.
We're just obstinate. And obviously we've got some mechanical skills in the house, but, it's mainly a question of not giving up. Some of these things are good ideas, but people just don't commit to them long enough.
Well, like you said, like the commitment not often becomes, can I make a living or any money really out of this? Like, how long am I going to commit to it? And, for me, it's like, I can make a lot more money fixing rowing machines. I don't think I'm going to start fixing mirrors. And I think as well, like you said, the usability, but also the functionality and just the bomb-proofness of it, in a shared club, like this equipment has to be really rugged.
Safe.
Yeah.
You knock a mirror over.
Yeah.
Trouble. Yeah. So how many products do you currently have on offer that you develop, that you maintain, that rowers can buy and use and enjoy and improve their training?
Yeah, well, they're all on the website. It must be. I don't know.
There's that many.
No. But yeah, a dozen.
Core products, a dozen.
Yeah.
And then, just lots of...
And obviously, once you start making wiring harnesses, which we're now doing in-house, we actually mould all the plugs and sockets in.
Yeah, we went in there and Joe showed us. Yeah, no, it's really
by choice necessarily, but now we've done it, it's actually really good.
Yeah, it's really, But so much involved in all that.
But we're saying we looked at the injection molding one and the ultrasonic one. Yeah. So that's incredible. But how much does the ultrasonic thing cost? There's a serious investment in equipment like that.
Yeah, I mean, we are very cautious, and that was bought second. Well, cautious. We don't have money to splash around. We bought that second hand. It was like $6 or $7
But exactly.
But then you've got to tool up each different thing, and some of that tooling you make yourself, but some of it you can't.
Yeah,
it's incredibly involved, and that's not trying to put people off. Rowing does need people doing new products, but there aren't many rowing companies who genuinely are trying to innovate. There are some, but there aren't many.
Yeah. So I'm genuinely interested, like in the next few years, obviously now that the active flow is released and then you've got the gate measuring system, what else do you see rowing possibly like needing in the next decade or so?
How do you keep innovating?
Well, like I say, we have a list of 5 or 6 products that we are working on, and some of them are commercially trivial, but we're still working on them. And 1 or 2 of them are quite exciting, and 1 or 2 are possibly a bit me too, and we may not do. Mm-hmm. So obviously we're aware of what our competitors do, but we don't copy. In the early days, you sort of have to, because they've established what the market is wanting. So people want a rate meter. You've got to do a rate meter. We can't really say what we're doing.
No,
and it's not like we're pretending that we're going to fly to the moon on a rowing machine.
I'd like that.
But, as the ideas come, we will do them, and we'll see how they work out.
Sure. I'm not necessarily asking you to reveal, not at all. I'm just thinking more in terms of like you're looking at all aspects of rowing. You're looking at indoor rowing. You're looking at outdoor rowing. You're looking at different forms of training, and like that's really exciting.
Yeah, there's some things we'll rule out. We're no interest in clothing, not because there's anything wrong with clothing, but there's lots of people doing it. We know nothing about it. So there's lots of people doing it. Well, you mentioned boat lights earlier. We'll never do boat lights because we think if people are prepared to pay enough money, there's good boat lights out there already, and we think there's a big liability issue potentially. There have been people killed by being run over by powerboats late at night in America, and the boat lights definitely didn't help. So, we're not going to get involved with that.
Yeah.
But whatever we get excited about, really, we're not in the. I'm past retirement age. I could stop. But I still love it, so I'm not going to.
Yeah. I really enjoy, in terms of like innovation, for me, the enjoyment is to like look for the bottleneck, like to be in that club environment and be like, problem solving, exactly. Like essentially, that's my job. Like that's what I'm become good at. And when you fix stuff, and like that's what's for me. It's like, I can see something that'll be fixed.
No, we don't want to do a prettier X, Y, Z. We want to solve a problem that rowing has.
And I think
rowing simulator, some clubs have access to tents, but most don't.
No,
And so you're trying to sort of get people rowing by sticking them out in a boat fairly soon. It'd be a lot better to get close and personal in a tank or on a simulator to get them doing the basic actions right before you shove them out in the boat.
I 100% agree. We had a rule for our novices at Oxford College that we were coaching at, that like you're not allowed on the water unless you've been instructed how to row on an ergo or at the tank. Because then we know that at least you've got the basics and you know what arms away is, easy there, those sorts of things.
But even still,
sequence coach for the erg.
Yeah, like that.
It's magic.
Yeah,
you actually showed it off to me a couple of years ago at Henley. No, but you're probably not going to remember.
I remember you, Marley, you said we'd had a chat, but apologies, but tons of people can't talk to you at Henley.
No, that's right. That was way before the podcast.
But it's like, that's a good example. So, it is a good idea. There have been 2 things like it before, but massive things that you bolt to the erg and you can't take off. There was a thing called a rowing shadow back in the 80s, or 90s, which Concept even sold for a while, which wasn't their design, but they sold it. And there's a guy in Australia with a similar crazy frame thing.
What is that? a rowing shadow?
Okay, so there's a bar bolted to the seat and it comes up and round here, so it goes up and down with the seat. So the idea is you shadow that bar with your hands, which is basically what sequence coach does, but it's sequence coach you can fit in the second and only costs 150 quid and it folds away and da-da-da-da-da. So, so we launched sequence coach 3 years ago. Yeah, and it just goes like this, and then suddenly people start talking, and we've never sent out a demo one without getting subsequent sales. Yeah, and that is that's
quite
cool. Yeah. So now you get American club following 12 at a time, and this sort of thing.
It's you can't underestimate like how much of the learning process can be cut by not starting with people on the water.
You should never let somebody do a bad stroke.
Exactly.
It's not possible. Obviously.
Yeah.
But if you never let them do a bad stroke, you won't get people feathering their hands and tucking their elbow in a finish and all this nonsense,
And it just, if you've taken 8 novices out it's just...
Yeah, I mean, you just need a stable platform.
And it's not their fault.
No, but it's just too much to learn.
You started on the sequence code, went to a tank for 4 sessions, or rowing simulator 4 or 5 sessions. Just be miles ahead.
It's a lot easier to teach good habits from the start than it is to overcome
double-handed feathering. It's the bane of my life.
I also think, personally, tank is better than nothing, but I've not yet rowed in a tank that's actually anything like rowing on the water. They're always incredibly heavy and cumbersome. The Oxford ones, it's okay for novices, but beyond that, it's not something that I think that you would do much on.
Yeah, the States you get moving water tanks.
Yeah. So if they've got motors on, and I've heard it, the moving water tanks are better. But in terms of that rowing simulator downstairs, that's something I feel that I would actually like. I'm not going to sit in a tank and do an hour's row. You'll do some technical stuff and probably move on.
Yeah, more accessible as well. Like going back to you're talking about Kieran Clark earlier with the athlete that sort of came up to him afterwards. It's like actually if you just had one of those that you could set up in 30 seconds and be like, okay, let's work on that quickly. Like
Alabama, the women's squad, have a swingulator, which is good. I mean, it's far too cumbersome, but it's got all the other problems, but it actually works quite well. And they, after a session, somebody's got a problem, they just get them sit on the swingulator and do some hands-on coaching.
Yeah.
So ours is a practical swingulator, whereas the swingulator died because you have to have a room.
It's absolutely
Even
massive.
in this room, you could only get a pair in.
Yeah,
sure.
A rowing pair. You only get 2 of them.
I like that.
But that's when they can become useful. Exactly, like after sessions, really quickly. You don't need to take the boat out on the water because that can take faff and everything. I think it's brilliant that you guys are bringing out all these new ideas, and pretty grateful that you're working past the age of retirement.
Because I enjoy it.
Yeah, exactly. to keep bringing out new products.
How old do I?
You will soon, mate.
But that's brilliant, and it's like we need more people doing this.
Yeah, there are other people, but but we're doing it as well.
No, that's what I mean. Is brilliant that you guys keep still bringing out innovations, and they're not just one-dimensional. They're not just gate accessories or just indoor rowing accessories. There's a full range. You guys are really planning hard. There's a lot of planning that goes into these projects to just really make the whole enjoyable experience of being a rower more enjoyable and more productive and more fruitful. And it does. My point is essentially that you need someone who loves the sport of rowing and who knows rowing through and through to be bringing things like this into the market. And it's hard to bring outsiders in and to still break into this sport.
Yeah, you've got to be a rower, and it helps if you rowed and coached and remember when you learned as a novice in 1968.
Was it really? Oh wow!
I always think that's the one great thing about rowing is that most people learn it when they're maybe 12, 13, 14, and I think you can remember being rubbish at it. I think the sports where you learn it when you're 3 or 4, you don't ever remember being bad at it. And I think people have a lot less empathy for novices. Whereas in rowing, I feel like it can be horrible if you're in the boat with one, but if you see, you're trying to coach a novice or you're trying to help that, I remember when I didn't have a clue what I was doing.
Even though they're not doing it on purpose.
Yeah.
It's
Whereas I think, something like some randoms, I don't know, some sport like skiing, when the best of them learn how to ski before they can walk. You know, I think there's more disdain for someone who doesn't know what they're doing.
It's probably true, isn't it? Yes, great geek, get out of my way.
Brilliant.
Awesome.
I think we've just got some quick fire round questions.
Well, yeah, or unless there's anything else you wanted to talk about or bring up, or are you happy?
Brilliant. All right. So, out of all the rowing venues that you've trained at, visited, or raced at, what are some of your favourites and why? Let's start with Joe.
Favourite, probably Seville.
Oh, yeah. Alpha Thames training camp.
Yeah, just good fun. Good, yeah. Beautiful place. Good night out. Good fun. Yeah.
Lovely about the night out. That's infamous.
You got to go 3, haven't you?
No. Most people just can't choose between.
Yeah, there's definitely a few. So I would have to say Bedford, because I learned to row there and fell in love with it.
Oh, yeah.
And actually, John O'Cheeseman learned to row at Bedford and was in the same house, although he liked the school and stayed, whereas I left as soon as I could because I didn't like the school. But Bedford, have you rowed there or been there?
No.
So the river goes through the town, and back in the 1968, the brewery was on the river, and there was a pipe that oozed the smell of hops out by the bridge. So it was just like,
Here we go. The truth comes out. I remember if Budweiser's brewing up on the Tideway, sometimes you get the hoppy smell, but probably not
I
quite.
remember that.
They're probably not quite as heavy as
We just
tea.
got a glue factory in Exeter. That wasn't so pleasant.
Just like we had in Poland, in this place called Kruszwica, where they had the Europeans, under 23 Europeans in 2021. There was a sugar factory, and sugar canes stink so bad. You could not walk through the town, or it was awful, truly awful. But funnily enough, Bedford, you're not the first person to mention Bedford as their favourite rowing venue. Yeah, Tim Foster said this.
Quite a few people have. It's interesting, even very high level rowers, they don't say, where the Olympics was, they say like where they learned to row. I like that.
It's good. It's sweet.
Awesome. So, if you were to go back in time and repeat a race when you're 60, 70 or older than that, what would it be and why?
Repeat because you want a different result, or repeat because you loved it?
Either.
It's up to you. If you wanted to relive the event because you just loved the atmosphere, or if you enjoyed you enjoyed the thrill of a ham dinger, or you're just like, I just can't come to terms with that one result.
Well, you've got to go first.
Giving himself time.
Yeah, so I'd probably say qualifiers for Henley Royal, where my first year at Exeter Rowing Club, purely just because it was just like such a fun group of guys, and we had the best possible time trial we could at that point, and we were just like so ecstatic when we heard we'd qualified. Just that like whole day, like it was just like, yeah, just one of those ones that I remember, and like to go through that again would be good fun.
Very cool.
To succeed when you don't think you can is so
like we were just all so invested, and like in the reality of it, we were pretty average, pretty rubbish, but
Didn't matter.
it didn't matter. Like we'd just like trained for this goal, and that was just to qualify to Henley, and we were just so happy to have done it, and we had like a really good row, and we were all just like buzzing even before we like kind of was qualified. We were just like, we knew that was like one of the best rows we could put down, given where we were. So yeah,
that's the dream. Yeah, win, lose or draw. If you had your best row, what else?
Yeah, so just like completely satisfied afterwards, and just like happy. Yeah, it was good.
Right, so I've got a funny rowing career because, yes, I rowed when I was a young man, but I had asthma and didn't know it. So I sort of got to club elite, but, never won a race except from the front. If we weren't in front by some substantial different distance, we hadn't got a chance of winning. So you get to NVI and you got an asthma attack. So that was all a bit sort of put in the past. But I had a really good veteran career because I cured my asthma, won Hill of the Charles, everything. But I think the best race was a veteran head of the river in a 50-year-old 8, and Peter Haney stroked it.
Oh yeah.
And And because he was coaching at the club, and we were good. We'd win we'd win the 50-year-old category every other year, depending on whether Molesey entered. We'd only lose by 10 or 12 seconds to them. But Hayden told the cox, Terry Baker, the guy who sorted the Spaniards, he told him to lie about the race. He told him to say it was 2 less than it was. And it was still very comfortable, but we came 4th overall rather than 15th, so only sort of 3 much younger crews beat us. And it just shows the power of that ability, his ability to row lifted the whole boat to a completely different level. And so, I've had other good rows, but I'd put that one as one of the best.
That's a good one. I like that.
Love that, yeah.
Question I normally ask is if you could go back, if you could travel back in time to the age you were when you first fell in love with rowing, what piece of advice would you give to that person?
So mine would definitely be, you don't have to push in every single session. Yeah, with like the caveat of like the weights, I'd do less weights. Like I'd probably not touch weights, because I think that was like a fundamental thing for my back going. I think, kind of that pressure that you have to do every session. It's really hard to kind of like pinpoint what that is without sort of
really just saying train properly.
Yeah, like just train smart. Yeah, like I think, but yeah, probably that's one of the biggest motivators for me in terms of this whole business is looking back at the mistakes I made, and is like, if I could have changed the way I trained and trained smart with the knowledge that I have now, like how different would it have been? So I guess it's just sort of train smart, not hard.
Good answer.
Yeah, so this is impossible. I would have discovered that I had asthma and done something about it. But the drugs that actually worked for me didn't exist back then, so it doesn't actually work. So that would have to be my answer.
Okay. Then I guess obviously being in a rowing-based business, I would also say if someone else was thinking about getting into this, or just in terms of starting business in general, any little piece of advice for them? Something you wish you know when you started? Don't say don't do it.
No, I think there's loads of things you say. I'd find a mentor who has done it before.
I love that.
Because I'm not sure I would have listened, just knowing my personality. But if I had the personality to listen, that would have helped me immensely. So find a mentor who started a small business, not managing ICI, because that doesn't mean anything, but started a small business and made some sort of success of it, just to sort of correct you when you have these grandiose plans.
Yeah.
So one piece of advice would be that.
I like that. Yeah.
Yeah, probably just like the complete opposite to what you said. So just do it. Actually, just
he wasn't involved at the beginning.
No, but like I think with the added to like what you're saying, like the advice is out there, but like fundamentally, just do it.
Take the plunge.
Like take the plunge, but not like a blind plunge, but like start the process and get the advice.
I have to say something. That's fine, but you have to have enough fun so that when it goes wrong, that you survive that. And that's the problem with that advice, because it will go wrong. And if you set out thinking, well, it's going to take me 15 grand to do this, it will actually take you 40, and you'll run out of funds and you have to stop.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say I'm thinking like pre that phase. I'm thinking like
pre that phase.
Pre that
do
phase.
Whatever you want.
Yeah, I think but I think like a lot of people just get. I think, what I'm getting across, a lot of people think too far ahead. They think, oh, that's going to be really hard to do. I'm going to need loads of money to do that. It's like just take the first step and just like put it down on paper, like go through like a few iterations. Because I think a lot of people obviously like when you get to that stage, it's very different when you're actually investing your own money. Then you have to take very informed decisions. So I think just that initial, I think it's very easy in this like day and age to be like, oh, it's really, really hard to do this sort of stuff. Like just take that first few steps.
I love both of those pieces of advice because one you need to have a mentor because they will just save you so much time because if you're gonna try and learn something from scratch, and then go and do it. For example, it might take you 18 months, but if there is somebody who's been there, done that, made some mistakes, potentially they're gonna save you a year of your life. So you might get there within 6 months.
Yeah,
but then
you don't want them to tell you what to do. You just want to tell them what you want to do, and then they say to you, well, have you thought that this might go wrong and that might go wrong?
Sure.
The problem solver.
Yeah, they're just, you mustn't let them take over. You know, you've got to do it your way.
But you do have to listen to me.
You know, I mean, where this conversation was going.
Sure thing, but also like with the advice, just do it. Like, there's a guy I really like on the internet called Alex Hermosi. I'm pretty sure he says you cannot think your way into success. You gotta do shit and see what works and see what doesn't. So I love the combination of like both those pieces of advice. I think
I agree with what you're saying. It's like it's so easy to just overthink it and put it down. I'd even say for this podcast, you spend 2 years being like, "That's a good idea." No, I don't know. It's not going to work. No one's going to want to talk to us. What equipment would we have? And it was him really. It was just like, "No, this is a good idea. This could work. We could do it." And it was like a really long time before we just went, "Oh God, let's just have a go then."
Yeah,
so let's just have a go and see what happens.
You're not putting anything at risk.
Yeah.
But you don't. Yeah, so my design company, every one of my clients would have put their house up as a guarantee for a loan at some point. You know, that's a really serious thing to do.
Oh yeah.
You know, so you've got to put your thinking cap on at some point.
When you get to the stage where there's like the ship analogy, like if you're potentially sinking the ship with a decision, then that's when you should like really seek advice and make sure you're making the right decision. A decision sort of above that's not going to change your life or sink the ship, then you've got a bit more free reign to kind of experiment with things. So if you're below that waterline, it becomes a lot more dangerous, and that's where you really, that's where you want a mentor who's been through that, done that, to kind of give you that advice. But beyond that, you don't jump in and get out a loan for your podcast equipment. You just go out and do the first one, even if you do it with an iPhone. Like it's
all risk, isn't it?
Yeah, you got to see that.
That's good. I like good answers.
Yeah.
Nice.
Absolutely. So I've just got one last question, and that is, who are some of your rowing idols or people you've looked up to during your career or after? That will be really interesting.
John's got to go first, actually.
So I think, I grew up around looking at like Hodgie and Reed when they were in their like prime, and that was pretty inspiring. I think like when they're in the pair as well, like that absolute like commitment to like stick with it, that was pretty
It was amazing, wasn't it?
The biggest thing being at the time they were sponsored. The team was sponsored by Siemens, and Siemens were giving bonuses. So a gold medal bonus at World Championships at the time, I think, is in the region of like tens of thousands. It was tens of thousands. Like up to maybe, I'm not 100% of the numbers, 20, 30,000 pounds, something like that.
Yeah.
So not only are they committing to try and win this race, they always spend 3 years, which they could have been sat in a 4 making bank, and like to turn the money down at the same time. It's like a big.
It's good.
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah.
Just for the love of it, for the love of the sport, to go up against the best and see what.
I think they were like that. That is the pinnacle of the sport at the moment. We're going to go up against it, and they like stuck at it as well. Like I think, that was pretty.
They nearly got.
So
was that
2010. Probably one of the most exciting.
Wasn't it?
Yeah.
Fantastic.
What about you, John? Any?
Yeah, I don't know. I think Foster, just because he's interesting. And he went through a lot, and he always emphasised the technical side of it, and he probably had choices about what he could do with his life. So I admire him.
And he's a Bedford.
He is Bedford. Oh right, okay. So I took. What was I doing? I think we were racing. Yeah, we were racing in one of the Bedford regattas, and the Bedford regattas they give a half-pint tankard for. No, not a half pint. A 2-pint tankard for novice sculls, whoever wins novice sculls, and maybe even a quart tankard for something elite sculls. Anyway, Foster rocks up after the Olympics and races elite sculls, and obviously wins. And there's all this sort of chat on the bank about whether he should. And, so my view would be, well, it's an honour to race him, even if you know you're going to lose. But he turns up without an ARA card. He hasn't even heard of them. But they still let him race, obviously. But it was just, that was really sweet, that he had such a feeling for Bedford that he wanted to race and win elite skulls there, even though he was obviously going to win, unless he hit the bank and fell in. That was a really sweet memory.
It's nice.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you guys so much for doing this episode with us. Like, it's been,
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
yeah, it's been great to hear about what you've been up to, about your plans, and about all the products that you've brought out and are constantly bringing out to improve rowers' experience all over the world. So this is fantastic.
Yeah, I'd say, really awesome to come down here. It was great to meet you. It's amazing, that you wanted to come and talk. I'd say, like, for me, having built a business and a life out of rowing, like, I definitely think, like, a company like Active Tools has been an inspiration for me to see someone, to see you guys, like, innovating and working hard and, like you said, putting money into products that aren't necessarily doing it for the money, but just doing it for the love of the sport. And it's certainly something that we tried to do and tried to make sure that what we're offering is affordable and, like, helpful for people. So, really nice to come and talk to you guys. And like, I think what you're doing is awesome. And I don't know if anyone else says it enough, but it's awesome to have people who care about rowing working in the rowing world.
And it's great to, like, actually see, like, the factory, like, where the products are being made. Like, we've been using your products for years. So, like, to see, like, where they're made and who they're made by, that's brilliant. So,
Well, thanks.
Cameron, in. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Awesome. That concludes everything for today's episode. So on that note, easy there.
Cue the music.